5 minutes after 6 a.m. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nachum Siegel. Welcome to a Thursday. This is your Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program. It is a JM and the AM broadcast for a Thursday, November the 1st, 23rd day in the month of Mar Cheshvan, and today is the day that we are here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We are in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood of Pittsburgh. We are here with our Jewish Unity Initiative, as we call it, to express our solidarity, to be here and let our brothers and sisters in Pittsburgh know, just like we've done in other communities around the world, that there are people, their own brothers and sisters around the world who care about them, who are thinking of them, and who are doing whatever possible to comfort them during this very, very trying time. We got into Pittsburgh last night. We paid a visit to the vigil, the extensive and really appropriate Jewish memorial to the 11 victims in front of the Tree of Life congregation. here in Squirrel Hill. We spent some time with some of the people in the area, and of course with Rabbi Wasserman, who's our host here at Congregation Sharei Torah in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood, where services are beginning to our right. The Tree of Life congregation that has become internationally known at this point is just minutes away, and this is a very close-knit community and one that wants the entire world to know that this is not what typically happens in this area of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is a very close community where both Jew and non-Jew alike and so many diverse groups get along. It has that small-town America feel. It has that historic Jewish neighborhood feel, as its reputation has always been, as a historic Jewish neighborhood. And we are here today to speak to the people here and to express our condolences, our wishes, our brotherhood and sisterhood as they move forward, please God, during this week of Shiva, this week of funerals, in the aftermath of this episode. With us live via telephone is the chairman of the Jewish Unity Initiative, and that's, of course, Simon Jacob, who's in Jerusalem as we speak right now. No greater unifying city than Jerusalem. And I asked Simon to join me for a minute at the beginning of this broadcast, just to again reiterate to this audience the importance of us being on the spot in the city where these types of things take place to express our support and solidarity. Simon, good morning to you. I'm sure you have a message for everybody listening as you broadcast, as you speak to us from Jerusalem.
Good morning, Nachum, and good morning, listeners. I'm always uncomfortable with this concept of chairman of the Jewish Unity Committee or initiative, Jewish Unity Initiative. But I'll be honest, today I couldn't be more prouder of you guys being in Pittsburgh. I am in Jerusalem. I actually just got back to Jerusalem. I was in America over Shabbat when everybody got the news of what had happened there. I was in the community of Elizabeth, and to be honest, all of a sudden we saw police cars, in front of the Beit Knesset and in front of the synagogue, and we were, everybody was saying to each other, why are there police cars here? Because we'd not heard anything about what had happened until after Shabbat was over. So it was a shock, and it brought it home how important this initiative is to all of us. We are one people, and to basically know that you're supported from places as far away as Eretz Yisrael, but literally by Jews all over the world. We are one people. We listen in, and we're aware of all the things that are going on, and again, we're supportive in any way we can be. So one of the things I'm looking for from you, Nachum, is anything that you see that can be of assistance to the community in Pittsburgh. I think this is what all of your listeners are looking for. Anything that can be of assistance to these to the people in Pittsburgh that will help comfort them or help them through this very difficult time. Everybody is standing by, awaiting some sort of instruction, because we're all shocked.
No question about it. And as you said, this is an initiative that again was founded on the premise that Jews around the world care, and that we have to always maintain that message and transmit that message to everybody. We are here in Pittsburgh, and as you know, there's nothing like being on the spot. You've traveled with us. You've been on the spot in places that needed the comfort, places that needed the brotherhood and sisterhood to be expressed, and this is no exception. And being here is certainly very different than hearing the news, and I'm glad we are here because of your support and your enthusiasm and our entire Jewish Unity Initiative support and enthusiasm among our lay leadership. We're able to do things like this, and we are certainly going to look out, as you just suggested, for any ways beyond this that we can help as a people, whether it's a financial assistance or any type of professional assistance that we can give to the community here. Simon, I thank you we're going to commence with our broadcast, and I know that everybody in Jerusalem joins me in saying, Pittsburgh, Anachnu imachem. Pittsburgh, our brothers and sisters, we are with you.
100% Nachum. Please, thank you very much for being there.
Tada rabba.
Tada.
Thank you very much. There he is, Simon Jacob, who is our chairman, Jewish Unity Initiative, joining us from the other side of the world and recognizing how important it is to be here. Miriam Al-Wallach, of course, is here. She and Yoni Pollack, our staff, who traveled with me to be here during this time at the broadcast. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I never thought, if you would have told me a week ago that we'd be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with this edition of JM and the AM, I would not have believed it, obviously. When this did happen, before Shabbos ended, I was already being asked, when are you going to Pittsburgh? I think people expect this from us. I always like to remind everybody that there are small and large gestures that can be made to show support for a community. And in this case, this gesture, not sure if we would classify it as either large or small, but this gesture is an important one because we are not only here for ourselves, we really feel we're representing worldwide Jewry who are tuned in together and who are concerned together and who are looking toward Pittsburgh together and who are hoping that the future of the Jewish community is going to be strong here together. And we're doing all that representing so many people around the world.
I think that that there are a lot of ways that people could answer if you had told me a week ago, fill in the blank.
Right.
If you had told me a week ago that somebody would walk into a shul on a Shabbos morning with multiple machine guns and armed with,
A cache of weapons.
exactly, and with terrible, terrible intent and hatred in his heart and in his mind, I would have, you got to be kidding me. It's Pittsburgh.
And the people here continue to remind us that this is not that any community, frankly, no community would it be understood that it would happen, obviously, in this country. But here, especially, it is completely the opposite of what this community is like. The unity that they feel throughout all ethnic groups and through all the diverse backgrounds that people have, and everyone living together in peace, and then this happens.
Right.
It's a complete aberration.
And there are the classic Pittsburgh stories, some of which we heard last night, many of which will be shared today on this program this morning, which show the beauty of Pittsburgh and the friendship and the love and the camaraderie here in this community, which is why, as you mentioned, it was so shocking. And we were privy to a number of those anecdotes, which were unbelievably heartwarming and made us all emotional at that moment when we heard about Mincha, what Mincha looked like in the Squirrel Hill community on Shabbos after the shooting. That image to me will last a lifetime. And yes, even last night when we went to the memorial outside of the shul, and we drove directly there. That was what we put in Waze. You want to know a location? That's what we put in Waze. And to arrive there and see the enormity of the memorial, and even though we've already seen it in pictures, but certainly it is unfathomable and unbelievable, both at the same time when you're standing there in front of it. And then you have the police officers who are standing guard, who we all had an opportunity to speak to and thank and shake their hands and show our appreciation. And, one police officer clearly saw that I was particularly emotional and in horrific shock as to being there in person to see what we were seeing. And he knew he couldn't hug me, but he also knew that there were no words to say. And at one point, when you and Yoni and I were milling about, I noticed a number of kids from the community. There were a lot of trick-or-treaters last night in Pittsburgh, and a couple of little kids came over in their costumes to share their candy with the police officers. And I said to one of the police officers, well, I guess we learn from kids that life goes on. And he said, absolutely. But he said it with pride, because Pittsburgh will rebuild and Pittsburgh will get stronger from this horrific incident. And so will the rest of us. And I think that that's an important lesson to learn.
We're here in Pittsburgh, and many people out there are have spent a lot of time, as we learned from the people who are in Pittsburgh, reaching out and asking what they could do. Frankly, a lot of people were encouraged not to come here
Right.
because they're overwhelmed with support. They're overwhelmed by the outpouring that's come from around the world, and especially from our area in the New York, New Jersey area. There have been busloads of people, students, and others who were planning on actually making their way out here. They've been encouraged to sit tight because of the overwhelming circumstance. Now that we're here, it's much easier for us to understand it. This is a relatively small community, as we know communities,
Right.
being from the New York area, and the main Jewish drag is a couple of blocks, and there are only a limited number of people who take leadership roles here, so they cannot possibly coordinate everything that people would like them to coordinate. So it's it's a very sensitive situation. And again, people would love to be here if possible, and to fill a role and to express their support. There are ways to do it without necessarily walking into town. There are first responders to thank. There are families that certainly would welcome condolence messages. Many of them would welcome that more than they would welcome visitors during Shiva.
Right.
Because of the nature of their families. Many of them are. We were even told, because our intention was to pay at least one Shiva call this morning, and we've already been told that Shiva house is reserved for family and friends. So I don't even know if people like us would be welcome there, which I understand.
100%. It's not about us.
They're not ready to welcome strangers in it, especially in the aftermath of what had happened to their relatives on Shabbos. So that is that's the situation here. It's a JM the Am broadcast from Congregation Shari Torah in Squirrel Hill. Miriam?
There were, as you know, as you've seen, and as we've all been posting, there have been, so many pieces that have come out. So much, as Mayor Fertig pointed out, so much good writing has come out of this tragedy, and there are a number of pieces that came out talking about the Chevra Kadisha and talking about the people who waited to do Shmirah for the 11 souls who were murdered. And there are a number of unbelievable articles that came out. One talked about the power of prayer, and there was a picture circulating on Sunday of 3 women outside of Tree of Life who were clearly saying Tehillim.
Made the front page of the New York Times.
Right, and I found that piece very important, and that picture very important. And I also found myself last night at the memorial at Eitz Chaim, completely at a loss for words, and for good reason. There's absolutely nothing to say, and you're completely overwhelmed when you're there. And it's also obviously incredibly solemn and incredibly somber and just heartbreaking. But I did find myself reaching for my Tehillim in my pocketbook. And I want to mention that because I think it is one of the beauties of our religion that when we are at a loss for words, the words are provided for us. There is something always to say. And they may not be our words, but they're certainly our sentiments. And that police officer who sort of had his eye on me out of concern last night saw me reach in and grab my sitter that I keep in my purse. And I really personally found strength in that last night. You and I have discussed the power of prayer.
Oh, yes.
Rebbetzin Adina Schmidman from the OU Women's Initiative joins me today on That's Life to discuss women in prayer. And I really, truly felt it last night when we were there.
The memorial reminded you of what scene had we been at?
I mean, it reminded me of Paris.
Right. It reminded me of the Bataclan
Yes.
aftermath, and frankly, and that was an even larger memorial for obvious reasons.
Right.
But this one was quite comprehensive.
100%.
All of the victims remembered, flowers by the thousands,
Stones.
and
Right.
candles, and signs and messages and cards.
And Tehillim. I mean, there were
Correct.
there were numerous printouts and handwritten notes that were just one psalm after another after another.
Some of the cards came from New York. Some of the cards came from schools that we represented, including the mission that we were on from Yeshivat Noam after yesterday's show. Plus, you were in your hometown, and the Hafter School their students provided some of the cards and signs as well. And we're going to try to deliver some more of those messages of support to the first responders later today. So we're witnessing a real coming together. We're witnessing an amazing outpouring of support
And generosity.
and generosity.
I mean, you're gonna have the opportunity to speak to Nina Butler a little bit later in the program, but the warmth, the openness, the Hachnasat Orchim that we were shown both yesterday by Rabbi Wasserman, who has 9,000 things to do within an hour, and the butlers who have been coordinating God knows how much here, and the point people for many different prominent Jewish organizations opened up their home last night. And I am completely not going to minimize the moment that you and Uri Butler saw each other. Now, Uri Butler is a voice and a presence and a personality that our listeners are completely aware of, familiar with. And I mean, the both of you, there was such happiness in that room last night to see each other.
Never thought that's why we would reunite, frankly.
Right.
But it was nice.
And it was so great to see him. And he was personally affected, losing a friend who was shot and who was murdered.
That's another thing that a lot of people in our community in New York may not realize or understand. There is a not just a cursory knowledge of the people and some type of casual relationship with the people, but those who were murdered were known throughout the entire across-the-board Jewish community. No matter what the background of different people and what shuls they daven in, they knew many of them who were there, and these funerals are taking place this week, of course. And many people, again, from across the board, are attending these funerals.
Right.
And generally speaking, we don't always have this crossover in communities. We don't always have this relationship with different segments of our religious backgrounds. In this case, it is, when we talk about unity, it really is unity. And you see the day school students who are affected by this, and you see Chabad who's involved, and you see the Orthodox rabbis who are involved, and you see everybody from the Reform and Conservative backgrounds who are involved, and their sanctuaries and their social halls serving as funeral homes or funeral chapels at this point. It is a really close-knit community that, again, a lot of us have difficulty understanding if we're from the New York area. The national media and international media continues to be, I don't want to use the word fascinated, it sounds a little too condescending, but I'll say that they are both in shock as they report about what happened Shabbos morning, and at the same time they are lauding appropriately the first responders and the fact that they ran in to try to save everybody. In today's Wall Street Journal, an article contributed by 3 different journalists, they write as follows: Carol Black had just sat down in the third row of the Tree of Life Synagogue downstairs sanctuary, was taking out her prayer book and glasses when she heard a loud sound she didn't recognize. What it sounded like to me was a big metal table being dropped on a tile floor, she recalled. I'd never heard a sound like that before. Rabbi Jonathan Perlman immediately recognized the sounds as gunfire, she said, and herded Ms. Black and 2 other congregants down a hallway to hide. 2 blocks away, a pair of Pittsburgh police officers were finishing roll call Saturday morning when the 911 calls about an active shooter at the Pittsburgh synagogue started pouring in. They are being attacked, said a police dispatcher. Multiple gunshots are heard from the lobby, possibly 20 to 30 shots. The 2 officers raced to the synagogue and quickly faced fire from the gunman's AR-15 rifle. Bullets hit one in the hand, the other was sprayed with shrapnel and broken glass. The gunman retreated inside. He's got an automatic weapon. He's firing out in front of the synagogue, one officer warned via radio. Less than a minute later, an officer says, every available unit in the city needs to get here now. Now, this may be the slogan of Pittsburgh, and certainly the slogan of the Pittsburgh Police Force. Their slogan on their police vehicles, as we saw last night, is to protect and serve. And in this case, they protected with every available unit and as best as they could. And they served, certainly, at 100% capacity. Every available unit in the city needs to get here now. And not to judge, but we've become familiar with circumstances in this country where police officers retreat, where police, and again, not judging,
Right.
but just this is the reality,
Fact.
that is the way they dealt with the situation. These officers, the way they dealt with the situation was to burst into the synagogue, to confront the killer face to face, and of course the proof, as they say, is in the pudding, because the murderer was apprehended inside the shul. He never even made it outside.
Right.
That's where they got him. So they as first responders and as police officers were ready to give their lives, and I know that that's the pledge they make, but they were ready to literally give their lives this Shabbos morning to protect Jewish people. And I think one of our themes has to remain that in history, first responders in major cities on this globe traditionally, I know there were exceptions, traditionally did not run into shuls to save Jews. Very often, first responders and officials for the government and for the police would run into shuls to murder Jews. And I think that as we talk about how could this happen in America, and we talk about, oh my gosh, Holocaust survivors survived what happened in Europe and come here, and they're faced with this. And Rabbi Wasserman is going to have quite a story to tell us a little later on about other Jews who left areas of great danger to Jews and came here, and then came at a time when this was happening in Pittsburgh. But it still must be stated that there is something about this country, and it's not just Jews. The police forces are committed to protect everybody. And there are so many people in this country who are not like them. There's so many people in this country who are so different from all of us. There's so many degrees of separation when it comes to ethnicity and when it comes to background. And yet, they have this, what I consider to be an amazing blessing, an incredible creed to protect and help anybody at any time, even if it means bursting into a building where someone with a cachet of weapons is trying to kill them. And it's really, we think about it in the context of history, it's absolutely remarkable.
We also should mention that we too, before deciding to come down here, really weighed the advice and the guidance that we were given and that other organizations were given before coming down, which is why a number of them decided that out of respect and the fact that the community was obviously strapped at this point taking care of their own.
For practical reasons.
Exactly. But we felt, and you put it perfectly, that we had a responsibility to combat some of the literature, the rhetoric that was coming out of the story about the divisiveness within the Jewish community,
Right.
and that that this just highlights how divided Jews are, and et cetera, et cetera. And you very poignantly and rightfully so stated that we as Orthodox members of the media have a responsibility to tell the true story, and that's the unity and the togetherness and the support that everyone is showing each other at this point. And to read one more article, to see one more piece posted online that highlights what is supposed proof of how no one is getting along is more than preposterous.
Well, put me over the top. I not surprisingly, what put me over the top was a New York Times article, which I happen to have in my bag. And I shouldn't say they, he, who's the journalist whose name is Halpfinger, I assume a member of our faith, he decided to utilize his space in the paper to talk about the division, to talk about these small, little, petty issues that have come up since Shabbos. Small things, the way people reference, the way the language people use in reference to the shul, and even the outrage, and I use that in quotation marks, of Naftali Bennett coming here when he's involved in the whole controversy with immigrants in Tel Aviv. How could he come here to comfort those who are in the U.S.? All these different things. Again, petty arguments and petty disagreements that I'm not minimizing in terms of their importance for our own community, but certainly was not the focus of what was going on in the aftermath of the Shabbos massacre. So we come here hoping that we can shed some light on the fact that the unifying effort from around the world is just remarkable, and that people are so focused on what's going on in this neighborhood. And it's also amazing how many people we have found out have roots here.
Oh my gosh.
It's incredible how many people that are really in the worldwide Jewish community at this point, both the U.S., Israel, and around the world, have roots in Squirrel Hill. It's an old, historic Jewish neighborhood with that dates back to the mid-1800s, which is a rarity, with a strong community since then, and it was always this very close-knit community, no matter what denominations were dominant in town. And it's a shame that we got to know the community a little bit because of this, but this is how, in fact, we got to know, and it's really how so many people have gotten to know it over the last week. It's a JMN broadcast. We're live from the Shari Torah congregation in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
As people are arriving for Minyan.
People are arriving for Minyan here, and Rabbi Wasserman is going to join us about an hour from now. We have other guests who are going to be joining us through the morning. In fact, one of our colleagues from the old WFMU days, who now lives in Squirrel Hill, is going to join us. That'll be a big surprise for those of you who've been longtime listeners of JM in the AM. Some of the people who work for Jewish Family Services are going to be by. You mentioned that there are a couple of journalists who've written about this episode and the aftermath are going to come by. And you mentioned Nina Butler earlier. She's certainly a leader in this community, she and her husband. And she has one agenda, and that agenda is to remind the world just how peaceful and wonderful this neighborhood is, and that they shouldn't think that this is a neighborhood that on a regular basis has this type of a thing happen. This is certainly viewed as an exception, but my gosh, what kind of exception it is! And being there yesterday at the memorial for the 11 victims, it was interesting to see people of all different backgrounds and clearly different religions and ethnic groups who stop by and pay their respects and are also in shock, are also, there were many tears there yesterday from people who just cannot believe
because it's their
that
home.
This happened in their neighborhood.
We should also, by the way, just mention that there have been a number of acts of anti-Semitism that have taken place since Shabbos. There was the defacing of the Beth Jacobs Shul in Los Angeles, which is horrific. There were swastikas found in a pretty upscale neighborhood in Brooklyn that had defaced
I'd say
the
upscale
sidewalk.
and progressive.
Yes.
Because those who think progressive means nobody hates Jews anymore. Think again.
It found all over the sidewalk, which they found very jarring, and for good reason. There had been a number of swastikas on the Upper West Side of Manhattan on various light posts and mailboxes over the last couple of weeks as well. And no, I am certainly not equating those acts to the horror of Shabbos, but I'm mentioning them only because they deserve to be mentioned.
Yeah, and they are filled with hate, no matter what level and what degree things like this are done. It reminds us of what's going on in Europe with all of the different, you can walk down the street and see these types of things, and it's happening in the United States of America.
Mayor Fertig, by the way, you should just know, he's listening. We thank Mayor, as always, and he says, Nachum always used to say the three most comforting words in broadcasting. Doug is next.
And Doug will be next, coming up here at JM in the AM. We're in Pittsburgh, everybody. We are expressing our solidarity with our brothers and sisters here in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. We're Congregation Shari Torah on Murray Avenue in Squirrel Hill. And we'll be joined by plenty of guests between now and 9 o'clock. A very important Jewish Unity Initiative, JM in the AM, coming to you on the Nachum Segal Network.
kol bayis Yisruay Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Hanesinim Matzuru Ivashiv Yu Voy midim bain bayom Ivain bayabushu Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Hanesinim Matzuru Ivashiv Yu Voy midim bain bayom Ivain bayabushu Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Hamu koi mirachai malayem V'yetzi ay mitzuru l'irvuchu Ima yafai l'leoiru Imi shibir l'geilu Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Hamu koi mirachai malayem V'yotzi ay mitzuru l'irvuchu Ima yafaynu le'oiru Imi shibir l'geilu Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Yisruay Hanesinim Matzuru Ivashiv Yu Voy midim bain bayom Ivain bayabushu Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Hanesinim Matzuru Ivashiv Yu Voy midim bain bayom Ivain bayabushu Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Hamu koi mirachai V'yotzi ay mitzuru l'irvuchu Ima yafaynu le'oiru Imi shibir l'geilu Achayni kol bayis Yisruay Yamu koi mirachai malayem V'yotzi ay mitzuru l'irvuchu Ima yafaynu le'oiru ויציע מצורו לרבוכו אם היפה אילולא אוירו משיבי לגאילו החייני כל בייס ישרוע
It's the brother in you I've been looking for, 'cause I know we share family ties. And all the world keeps telling us how you and I are really so alike. It's not about the language or geography, no connection to color, shape or size. It's rooted deep in our history. It's a spark that we carry inside. If we join as one today, we can build a better tomorrow. You and I have always shared one heart. We were never meant to be apart. My fellow Jew, we can make it happen. You and I have always shared one song. Jews from every corner of the globe. And that's our hope, unity forever. We can make it happen. We can make it happen. חיפשתי את אחי שקרוב אליי, רציתי שנהיה חברים. אני, אתה וכל העם הזה, אולי נחדש את הקשרים. אולי לא מדברים אותה שפה בכלל, הכובע והצבע לא דומים, כי אנחנו משפחה אחת, זה חיבור שקיים לעולמים. כי כולנו לב אחד, כי איש אחד בלב אחד. אם כולם נאהב פה זה את זה, את הגאולה ודאי נראה, וכבר נזכה לפגוש את המשיח. כי הגיע הזמן להתאחד, אנחנו לא רוצים להיפרד, ונשאר עם אחד לנצח. were never meant to be apart. My fellow Jew, we can make it happen. אם כולם נאהב זה את זה, את הגאולה ודאי נראה, וכבר נזכה לפגוש את המשיח. Jeden findet die ganze Welt, kimmt sich zusammen eingezählt. Das ist der Weg, sie bringen die Geile. Consola ou au bout de la terre, on restera à jamais des frères. C'est notre histoire, c'est notre prière. Siempre hemos tenido el corazón, nunca separados sin razón. Mi hermano, podemos hacerlo.
A song that I feel is somewhat of an anthem for this tragedy, One Heart. One Heart. The collective Jewish heart, as we always say, has certainly felt the pain of the Pittsburgh Jewish community over the last week, during this week of funerals and Shiva. And here we are in Pittsburgh on a Thursday morning, reminding all of us that we have to turn our attention to communities that are in need, communities that need a boost, communities that need some love and affection, and a show of solidarity and brotherhood, and that's us in this case with the Jewish Unity Initiative and JM&AM being here in Pittsburgh on this Thursday. Rabbi Wasserman is our host at Congregation Shari Torah, and we thank him, of course, and he'll join us coming up later on. Before the morning was over, as the Wall Street Journal continues in this morning's article, as we know, 11 of the worshipers gathered inside for Saturday Shabbat services would be dead, the victims of a man who has spewed anti-Semitic vitriol on fringe social media sites, and the aforementioned police heroes that we spoke of. 4 of them would be wounded by gunfire, thought to be the worst anti-Semitic attack in United States history. And that is, as the mayor and governor alluded to earlier in the week, that's what Pittsburgh is going to be known for right now, for this horrific episode and for a gunman who pierced the heart, the collective Jewish heart worldwide, by walking into that shul on Shabbos and doing what he did and murdering 11 people.
You've been very outspoken in your praise of both the governor and the mayor.
I thought they handled things really well, aside from, I don't know if the President of the United States and someone in that position deserves to be, how do I put it, not ungreeted when he comes to town, but
Putting that aside.
But putting that aside,
Right.
and believe me, I certainly understand where both sides are coming from, and I also would hope that both sides would understand that both sides are responsible for all that's going on in terms of the rhetoric that's going on in this country right now. But that's a bigger topic and for another time.
You know, with everything that Rabbi Wasserman has going on now, and frankly, I mean, you and I get up very early. I'm completely humbled by the number of hours that Rabbi Wasserman puts in. He has still been so incredibly gracious in terms of everything that he has done for us to make sure that we are set and everything that we need here to be able to produce this radio show. And as we speak, you know, his numerous duties in this community continue to call.
Yeah. Well, Matis is going to laugh as I say this, but I said this to Yoni earlier in the car when he was commenting, man, it looks like Rabbi Wasserman's up all night. And I said, well, he's a Wasserman. If you know anybody in the family, this is the way they are. They are up all night, and they're helping people all day and all night. And if you're going to have a Jewish spiritual leader in the Orthodox community play this role and be somebody who's on the front lines of the taharas and the funerals and body preparation and dealing with all these different things that have to be juggled as all this is happening over the last few days, he is one of the people you want to be at the helm. So you are recognizing someone who has incredible stamina and has incredible leadership. And I think we picked this up at the Butler home yesterday.
100%.
As they lauded,
Right.
and they're pretty active themselves.
Yeah.
But as they lauded the way Rabbi Wasserman deals with this community and what he's brought here over all these years.
The three of us are falling asleep last night, and you know, the butlers were just ready for the next set of guests to walk in
And by the way, when
and have dinner.
when we walked in to Pittsburgh, they were sitting with a rabbi from Great Neck, New York.
Correct.
I'm
From the
men-
Mashadi community.
I'm mentioning this because, again, from hundreds of miles away, from a different background than any of the people who are victims here, someone comes in a rabbinic leadership position, attends funerals, and leaves messages of condolences, and that should not be overlooked. There are some rabbinic leaders who have made it out here, and once they got here, were thanked profusely. Again, not minimizing the efforts of those who wanted to come but were encouraged not to. But there were some who did make it and certainly paid their respects and represented their communities very, very well. JM at 8 minutes before 7 o'clock. I do want to mention, as we get toward the top of the hour, that there is some news from Israel, as we know. Firstly, in Yerushalayim, Moshe Leon and Ofer Berkovich are going to be in next week's runoff for mayor of Jerusalem. So the choice of Prime Minister Netanyahu is out. Zev Elkin is not going to be in the runoff next week. He's already conceded. In Haifa, the 15-year run of my cousin Yona Yahav, I think it was 15 years, has now ended. Cousin Yona is going to be replaced by Einat Kalish Rotem, female mayor of Haifa. And Ron Huldai won his 5th term as mayor of Tel Aviv. So he's entrenched in that position. And in one of the most interesting races, and for some reason a race that was followed very closely by our community, meaning the American diaspora community.
For some reason. I mean.
Well, because of the connection that so many people have to Beit Shemesh. In Beit Shemesh, Aliza Block is going to be the next mayor in a squeaker by less than 500 votes. But that is certainly significant moving forward in that community. And I'm sure there are a lot of very happy JM listeners in Beit Shemesh right now, because I know a lot of people that we know were on her side and rooting for her.
Right.
To win that election. It's a Thursday morning. It's the 23rd of Mar Cheshvan, and it's the very first day of November 2018, and we are in Pittsburgh. We're in Pittsburgh showing solidarity in the aftermath of what happened. There are accounts of the activities of the Pittsburgh Police Department and the SWAT teams and what they did in running into the shul this past Shabbos, and they have to be thanked, and we are intending to thank them again today as we did last night in person. Also, I will say the following. There's something about Jewish tradition. Our Jewish tradition tells us that there's no comparison between seeing something and hearing something, that seeing is really believing. And being there last night, after seeing all the pictures and all the footage and all the gatherings and the prayers and the protests and everything that we've seen coming out of Pittsburgh over the last few days, to be there last night at the makeshift memorial and with each one of the victims' names on a Jewish Star of David, it was really surreal to an extent.
Did it remind you of Arlington? It reminded me of Arlington.
Yeah, a little bit.
It did. It had that. It had that honor.
And it had the, obviously, in the background is the shul's name, because it's there as you stand in front of the shul, and it's very prominent. Again, one of these old style both sanctuaries and buildings in this older historic Pittsburgh neighborhood. But I found it interesting that Jewish traditions die hard. And I thought this was a very important aspect, at least it was to me, in regard to this whole topic of how we respond to tragedy. Although it was a makeshift memorial, and it was not the actual graves or tombstones of the victims, everybody, Jew and Gentile alike, were leaving stones on top of the memorials. There were 11 of them set up. And I thought that was significant. It was one of those moments for me that reiterated that Jewish tradition and Jewish presence is going to go on. Mm-hmm. That we are going to continue. Now, the purpose of the stone, of course, is to erect our own matzeva, erect our own permanence, so to speak, in the collection of stones that are on a tombstone. And here it was like everyone coming together, and not just speaking the words, and not just paying lip service to the unity aspect, but but making a declaration, doing a physical act in showing that we are together. And I thought there was something about it that really hit me as being very sweet and being a show of strength. And the first thing that came to my mind was Jewish tradition dies hard. That it's just that there's something to it, that in the aftermath of this, it may not be the actual tradition. It may not be that we're on a cemetery and this is, how one leaves a cemetery by leaving a stone. But even here at this memorial in front of the shul, we are going to do what is traditional and to do what is, not expected, but what would be, proper in paying respects to the dead.
And I think that just to pivot from that is this initiative to show up for Shabbat, asking people to make sure to be in shul wherever you go, whatever congregation is yours. Make sure to go to shul this Shabbos. It is an unbelievable initiative, and the goal is obviously to pack our shuls on a Shabbos where
Early.
Right, early, where frankly
Not 10 minutes before Adon Olam.
though if that's the only time you can get there, get there.
Yeah.
Okay, but on a weekend, on a Shabbos, that it is that your knee jerk might be to stay home. That there is a concern, that there is a fear.
Or if you generally stay home.
Correct. Or that you wouldn't necessarily make the effort. Make the effort.
Right.
Make the effort.
This is a really good Shabbos
Yes.
to show the world that we are going to be resilient in every congregation in the United States.
and
we're
defiant.
we're going to be showing up, and we're going to be showing up early, and no matter who we are and what our background is, we're going to be gathering together in our sanctuaries and praying to God. And the likelihood is that in cities around the United States, and we in New York tomorrow are going to get an opportunity to speak with the chief of police of New
Right.
York, not the police commissioner, but the chief of police. The highest-ranking uniformed officer in the New York City Police Department is joining us tomorrow morning in the 7 o'clock hour. And chances are, as people go in cities large and small in the United States to shul this Shabbos, chances are there will be police officers along the route. And if
Correct.
not, there'll certainly be an awareness by the local police officers of what needs to be, of what they need to know as people go to synagogue. And that has to be acknowledged. And again, there's so many different themes, so many different things we're talking about here, but these two right now are really important. Number one, being shul, and number two, recognize that in the majority of cities in other parts of the world, people do not have the freedom to walk freely to shul. They do not have the advantage of being protected by first responders
Right.
where they are in the manner that we are going to be this Shabbos, and that must be acknowledged.
Yeah.
Also, let's encourage everybody, although I hope this doesn't even have to be said in the aftermath of what happened, let's encourage everybody to really analyze their security concerns.
Right, and I think that's part of the conversation you're going to have with Rabbi Wasserman. That was something
Right.
that he and I, that I briefly asked him last night. As when we arrived here, I was surprised that there were no police officers stationed outside, and he gave me an unbelievably well thought through answer that I presume he'll share with you on the air. But to me, that would have just been something that I expected here, for sure. But nevertheless, Nachum, when you're saying recognizing the police force that that will protect us this Shabbos, that will likely protect us for many Shabbatot to come, thank a cop. When you see somebody, when you see a police officer, make sure to thank them for their service. If you can't get to Pittsburgh to thank the people who are here, make sure to thank those local officials who protect you day to day.
This is America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listener-sponsored digital radio around the world on the web at NachumSegal.com, on the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, on the beloved NSN app. And those of you who are longtime JMNAM listeners, you'll get this reference when I say the three most comforting words in the history of broadcasting. Doug is next. And I say that because Doug Shulkind not only followed me for, 20 years or so, I would say, something like that? About 20 years.
You know, I originally preceded you 30 years ago.
Meaning
1988.
meaning 3 a.m. to 6 a.m.?
You were starting at 6:30. back
Right.
then.
So
I
3
was
to
on
6:30 to the
Sunday
show?
night, Monday morning, 3 to 6:30.
Talk about graveyard shift, Doug.
Yeah, that was my-
Sunday night. Wow. Unbelievable. Doug Shulkind followed me on after JM and the AM for many, many years. And that's where the Doug is next comfort whole thing comes from. I'm sure it brings a smile to any longtime listener. And then, half jokingly and half seriously, when you moved to Pittsburgh, we said at some point it is likely that we're going to meet up here because there's a really large, nice, historic Jewish community. We never, neither of us thought it would be under these
It's
circumstances.
horrific circumstances, but it's a delight to see you
It
nonetheless.
is great to see you. You're here how many years at this point?
A little over 8.
Wow, and you can confirm that this is in fact one of the nicest small towns, do we call it that, or neighborhoods in a big city in the United States?
You know, it's felt like just another Brooklyn neighborhood to us.
Right.
So it definitely, it's an incredibly welcoming, diverse, wonderful place to be. I live 2 minutes up the street,
I know. And,
right next to Paul Zedek. So
Oh,
it's,
so you're next to a different shul.
Yes.
And it is remarkable, and maybe this is why it's Brooklyn-like, frankly, that there's so many different ethnic groups, people of diverse backgrounds, and still the Orthodox and other Jewish denominations right here in town. And it seems that everybody, I think we knew this even before this episode, but it seems everybody's really peaceful and and living nicely side by side.
There's a high concentration of faculty and students from all the universities: Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, Carlow, Chatham University. So it has a cosmopolitan feel in what is really a small town. I mean, within weeks of being here, we were meeting people who knew people who we've just met. So it is definitely it has a big world feel in a small world place.
Tell us about Saturday. How did you and the average person find out what was happening minutes from your home?
Well, my beloved wife, Jessie, was going to meet up with a group of people who were going to be election canvassing. They were going to go to a neighborhood in the North Hills where there are a lot of districts that are up for grabs. So they were meeting at a central location to get together and then travel over there. The central location was about a block from Tree of Life on
Wow.
Shady Avenue. And
We were on that street last night.
and about 10:15, 10:20, I got a text. There's an active shooter at Tree of Life. Police have told us to stay in place.
I didn't realize she was right there.
Yeah. So that's how I found out. I mean, we don't have a TV at home, so I immediately got on the internet, put the radio on, and so when she heard that, we have dear friends who are members of Dor Hadash.
In that building.
In that one of the 3
Right.
congregations that uses that building. The woman of the couple that we know is the president-elect of Dor Hadash, and the couple was on their way to New York for a concert that they'd long been wanting to see, and they hadn't known about it. Jesse got in contact with them. They turned right around,
Came back.
came back, and of course they had been going to funerals all week. So it's
And you told me that you actually knew some of the victims.
so I don't know if you know this, but I went back to school. I went to graduate school in 2016. I went to social work school at the University of Pittsburgh. That came about through after my mom passed in 2015. I moved my dad here. He had advanced dementia, and he moved him into an assisted living place. And the experience of navigating social services for him, caregiving, that whole experience was an inspiration to me to go to social work school. My mother had been a social
Wow.
worker. My mother-in-law had been a social worker, and it was just kind of a legacy. That's obviously where I was headed. In my first year, in both years of social work school, students have to do a field placement where you are doing work in the field, learning like crazy. And my first year field placement was at the Jewish Community Center. They have a county-administered senior center there called Age Well Pittsburgh, which is a collaboration of Jewish Family Children's Services, Jewish Federation, Jewish Association on Aging, and the JCC. So a number of the participants in the senior center, which involved a daily hot lunch, activities, socialization, a number of the participants were victims of the atrocity.
Unbelievable.
There were two of the victims in particular fellows who I remember always sat together at lunch. And one of the great joys for me in doing this internship was that I would sit and have lunch with people and meet lots of people and make them comfortable with me, so that as I'm somebody who they would interact with, I was a known quantity and not just a stranger. So yeah, there were a couple. I have another connection, and that is one fellow who is injured and recovering, Dan Lager, who is getting better and doing much better.
Thank God.
I heard that he was up on his feet the other day, so after being in critical condition. His wife is a elder care specialist and social worker at Jewish Family Children's Services. And within days after I moved my father here, my sister, who had flown in to help from California, we were a wreck. He was very in rough shape. When people with dementia suffer great anxiety and stress, it can make the dementia worse. So we sat with a woman who was helping us, setting us up with services, finding round-the-clock caregivers, or at least people who could fill in the gaps. And that woman was such an inspiration to me. She is the reason I went back to social work school. And her husband, Dan, is the fellow who was injured.
Unbelievable.
He's a chaplain who for University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And one of the things that he does as a volunteer is he goes and sits with elders. And he sat with my father in his first months when my dad was here. So we've had Dan and his wife Ellen, as well as all the victims, in our hearts ever since.
And we pray for his speedy recovery.
And I mean, it's a double blow, that if he weren't injured, he would be the first person in line helping everyone else.
That I'm sure. We're meeting a lot of those people helping.
So, yeah, that's
Doug Shulkind is here. For those of you who are longtime JMNAM listeners, I'm sure the name is familiar. Doug followed me at WFMU for a very, very long time, Friday mornings at 9 a.m. You still do that show at 9 o'clock Friday? You're still doing it live. Amazing.
When I moved to Pittsburgh, I set up, at Ken's suggestion, I set up a 24-hour web stream sort of based on my show and my tastes, and used that as a platform to present my own live broadcast. And because I have the ability to have remote DJs, we don't have at WFMU. You don't want to have people doing lots of long music broadcasts remotely because of the technical issues.
And other issues, but
and other
philosophical issues, but
yes,
that's not for today.
It is a station policy.
Right.
I was hoping to break that policy.
You and I both.
But
I think everybody went through their stage of wanting to break that policy.
Well, because I mean, life.
Became mobile.
You know, so I realized that if I could do a show on this platform remotely, then anyone could. And so I now have about 20 shows from around the country, a couple in one outside of the country. So my own mini radio station.
That's great. That is cool.
So,
and if people actually go to the WFMU website, there's access to it from there, right? Give the Drummer some.
That's right.
For those of you who remember Doug's show's name. It's amazing you walked into this community 8 years ago and you really became immediately a real member of this neighborhood, a real neighbor to everybody.
I don't think you can't. I
In
mean,
Squirrel
obviously,
Hill.
I think you have. I do think you have maybe, obviously, elders who are shut in, or as you get older, people tend to isolate themselves, which is something we try to help with. But it's really hard not to. If you're shopping on Murray Avenue, if you're a regular, you interact with the shopkeepers. You recognize people; they recognize you. It just grows. And also, I think Pittsburgh also is that way. It just has this very small town, everyone knows everyone kind of a feel. When we moved into our house, we bought a house here just on the strength of my wife's promised salary. We could never have bought a house in Brooklyn at the time, but the people who were renting the house that we were in were dear friends with a family who we were friends with in Brooklyn, in Carroll Gardens in Brooklyn. So it just feels like
connected.
the world just shrinks. So
And anybody who goes to Paulay Tzedek, is it?
Yeah,
Seconds away from your home. That's
literally next
You're
door.
literally next door.
Yeah.
Has the rabbi made any overtures to you, Doug, or he's leaving you alone? Because if you need help with that, you just let me know.
It's actually, we love being next door. On snow days, I shovel, past the end of my sidewalk. They salt past the end of their sidewalk.
It's a nice collaboration, huh?
And and I love just the fact that there are people. There are people
Constantly there.
on foot
Right.
in the neighborhood around. It just feels like a used space, a public space, and it is it's
What a nice perspective.
It's wonderful.
Phenomenal. Well, great reuniting with you.
Yeah.
Next time, let's do it for some happy occasion,
Yes.
please. Great seeing you, Doug. Thank
You
you
too.
so much. Doug Shulkin, everybody. WFMU legend. And and those of you who want to check his stream out, you can go to the WFMU website. It's called Give the Drummer Some, and he has been an amazing member of the Squirrel Hill community for the past 8 years, and everybody out there is getting the feeling and getting the message from the people here in Squirrel Hill that this is a real neighborhood, a real community, and one where the furthest thing from anybody's mind would be that somebody would walk into shul on a Shabbos morning and murder 11 people. And here we are during a funeral week, during a Shiva week, saying that we are with you, our brothers and sisters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. More coming up from Pittsburgh at JM in the AM.
Ono Hashem, Oishi Ono Hashem, Hatzlich Ono Hashem, Anenu v'yoim kodeinu. Ono Hashem, Oishi Ono Hashem, Hatzlich Ono Hashem, Anenu v'yoim kodeinu. Ono Hashem, Anenu. Ono Hashem, Anenu. Ono Hashem, Anenu. Anenu v'yoim kodeinu. Ono Hashem, Anenu. Ono Hashem.
JM in the AM with Simcha Leiner here on a Thursday morning. We are in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the reason we're here in Pittsburgh is certainly well known. After the terrible tragedy in the aftermath of the murder of 11 of our brothers and sisters this past Shabbos, we felt it was important and appropriate to be here with our Jewish Unity Initiative, simply to say, our brothers and sisters in Pittsburgh, we are with you. One of the people who could tell us directly about this past Shabbos and what it was like here in Pittsburgh, and certainly knows this neighborhood and community very, very well, is Commander Jason Lando of the Pittsburgh Police Department's Zone 5. Commander Lando is out of town, not in Pittsburgh this morning, so we're making contact with him via telephone, but he's agreed graciously to join us and share a few words with us this morning here at JM in the AM. Commander Lando, shalom. Welcome to JM in the AM.
Thank you very much.
Take us back, if you would, from your vantage point to Shabbos morning and how this bucolic, quiet, peaceful neighborhood was transformed into this into this area of bedlam and horror this past Shabbos.
Yes, I mean, such a tragic day. Actually, I'm the commander of the Zone 5 police station, and this occurred in Zone 4. I just happened to be on call. All the commanders take turns on call each week, and I was coming back from, I was paged to deal with the situation, and I just happened to be driving through Squirrel Hill. It's not my district, but it is where I grew up. And as I was driving right through the business district in the area of Forbes and Murray, I heard the call come over the radio. And, to be honest, it was completely surreal. My first thought was, this is a prank call. This could not be happening in our city. For those of you, listening that aren't familiar with Squirrel Hill, the business district is probably about 3 or 4 blocks away from the synagogue. And I just started heading that way and tried to get some confirmation that, whether this was a real call or whether someone was calling it a prank call. And I arrived on scene, probably 30 seconds after the call came in, and there was already a car from the Zone 4 police station there. And all you could hear was just rapid gunfire coming out of the front of the synagogue. And, the whole situation it was so devastating. I grew up in Squirrel Hill. That is my family's synagogue. My grandfather goes there every morning. So, trying to manage the initial situation, but also trying to get confirmation of whether or not my grandfather was in there was pretty difficult situation, to say the least.
And he happened, just for those listening and concerned, he happened not to be in the synagogue that morning, but as you just said, every morning that was his regular place. That is his regular place.
Yes. So after about 30 minutes into the situation, I got a phone call from my uncle, who was able to track him down, and he was safe. But after speaking to him, I learned that Joyce Feinberg was his ride to synagogue. She's one of the victims, and she went without him on Saturday morning, and so I don't think that's something he's ever going to get over.
Wow. So I would assume, again, based on the background you just told us about Commander Lando, that you knew most, if not all, of the victims in Saturday's attack.
I had certainly heard all their names. I knew some of them from seeing them around the neighborhood. My grandfather and my mother, their ties were much closer. But that's where I went. I went to Sunday school there. I went to Hebrew school there. Actually, the reason I'm out of town right now is one of my childhood friends lives over on the other side of the state, and we kind of grew up in there at the Tree of Life. And I came out here to visit and say hello. But it's just it's almost as though it hasn't sunk in yet.
What can you say about your colleagues? We're lauding them appropriately, as is the entire world, as you and they ran in to go face to face up against this killer, and to save as many people as possible, and to do whatever was necessary. I mean, what could you tell us about the Pittsburgh Police Department and their reaction to what happened on Shabbos morning?
I can't say enough about how brave my brothers and sisters are. I was, as the situation was unfolding, I'm watching these police cars like screech up to the scene, and these officers, some of them brand new young officers, getting out of their cars, putting on their gear, and rushing towards danger. And it was something we trained for, but we pray never happens. And I'm just watching them as their training is kicking in. Everybody there that day was incredibly brave, but I have to say that the members of our SWAT team are, there aren't even words to express, these guys. They train every week. They go through drills. They work together as a team. So when this type of thing happens, they're prepared. And to watch these guys run right into the synagogue, knowing that there was someone in there with a high-powered weapon and he wanted to shoot his way out, it was just, almost, it was just unreal to listen to the radio transmissions and to know that these guys were going in there to do what most other people wouldn't, and to stop this guy from getting out of the synagogue and going around the neighborhood. Because if the situation went mobile and these guys didn't do what they did, who knows what would have happened?
Yeah, God knows.
My fear is that he would have started working his way around other synagogues in the city. So the bravery that those men and women showed that day was unparalleled.
Commander Jason Lando is with us, Pittsburgh Police Department, Zone 5, the zone right next door to the Tree of Life, Zone 4. But as the commander just mentioned, he grew up in the Tree of Life synagogue. This is a week of funerals, a week of Shiva, obviously a very difficult week for everybody here. Firstly, we noticed, just from our quick visit last night, that people of all backgrounds, of all diversity, of all ethnic groups were at the memorial last evening. I'm assuming that you would confirm what others have told us, that no matter what people's backgrounds may be, this is a very tight-knit neighborhood.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, Squirrel Hill's always kind of been like a melting pot of the city. It's a very diverse neighborhood, and it's just, you don't think of violent crime, when you think of Squirrel Hill. So I think this really just was a wake-up call to a lot of people that this can happen anywhere.
And what do you think going forward after this horrific week? Do you think this community can rebound? Do you think this community can recover in any way from what has happened this past Shabbos?
It's certainly going to take a while, but I really believe that we will come out stronger as a community after this. I mean, just one small case in point was the line of people, with everything going on across the country between, police, community, and the division. I was watching on the news yesterday, there's a line of there's a line of citizens, black, white, young, old, it didn't matter. They were in line outside of the police station to just hug the officers and thank them. And, it's terrible that it takes, a tragedy, but you could see it's bringing people together who might not otherwise have come together. So, if that gives me a little bit of hope, but we will get through this together as a community.
Have other police departments contacted yours, other police departments from around the country, not just to offer condolences and to give their support, but also to talk about the bravery of the men and women that you described and how much they admire what happened here from your vantage point this past Shabbos?
Yeah, there's been an outpouring of support in many different forms from all over the country. People wanting to know just how they can help, if they can donate money, or food or whatever. And it's incredible. I mean, people that I've never, I didn't know, never met. We're getting messages on our Facebook page, phone calls saying, I live in California and I don't know any of the victims. I've never lived in Pittsburgh. But what can I do? How can we help? And so, we appreciate it. And it's just so wonderful to hear people, that concerned and just wanting to do something.
We're encouraging everybody nationwide to go to shul this Shabbos, to show resilience, to show strength, to be together, to show unity and brotherhood and sisterhood and solidarity. And I'm sure you'd reiterate that. You want people to go out, you want people to continue their lives, and certainly to pray and take advantage of this incredible freedom of religion that we have in this country.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the worst thing that we can do is to stop doing what we're doing out of fear. But it's just important that we pay honor and pay respect to those that lost their lives. But we have to move forward, because if we don't, then the people that spew this hate, they're the ones that win, and we can't let that happen. Commander
Lando, God bless you. As we think about this happening in your shul, the shul in which you grew up, but it must be just so many more layers of sorrow and difficulty for someone like yourself. We hope that you and the community find comfort and solace from all the wishes of condolence and all the brothers, all the solidarity and messages that are coming from around the world. Thank you so much for everything that you've done, and the best of luck and the best of wishes moving forward.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Commander Jason Lando, Zone 5, Pittsburgh Police Department. You heard him describe the horrific scene this past Shabbos and how he was on call and one of the first to respond, and how familiar he was with the congregation and the people who were murdered in it. JM and AM on this Thursday as we continue from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, demonstrating that we have to be here for our brothers and sisters at all times and demonstrate brotherhood and solidarity, part of our Jewish Unity Initiative that we take very seriously. Rebecca Remsen is here. Rebecca is from the Jewish Family Community Services, coordinating mental health services here in Pittsburgh. Rebecca, welcome to JM and the AM.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here, and I think that you, on behalf of a lot of people, can accept appreciation and thanks for all that you've been doing over the last few days. This must be extremely difficult, and coordinating mental health services, I assume, means that students and young people and old people are all, as one can understand, having trouble dealing with the aftermath of this episode. So thank you for all those that you're helping this week.
Well, thank you for coming to Pittsburgh to speak with us.
Appreciate that. What's involved in helping people this week? What needs to be coordinated on your end to help people get through this?
Well, our team was on the ground first thing Shabbat morning, even before the congregants filed into the JCC waiting to hear about their family members. Our team was there preparing the space and preparing the space to wait for news. And we've been with the community ever since, and we'll continue to be with the community for as long as they need us for the weeks, months, years ahead. We are right now really trying to make sure that the people that need counseling services are receiving counseling services. Everyone in Pittsburgh is affected by this, and part of providing counseling services is understanding the scope and how many people are affected. When you find out that a senior center in Turtle Creek which is a 20-minute drive away, which is far in Pittsburgh terms, is really dealing with grief and needs counselors, we're going to send someone there.
Wow.
The scope is so wide. Everyone is impacted. The Pittsburgh Steelers are all impacted. Just walk down Maury Avenue and ask people. Everyone knows somebody. Everyone's at least said good morning or where's the milk and Giant Eagle to all the victims, because that's what Pittsburgh is.
Rebecca Remsen is with us. Obviously, the immediate family members, they need special consideration. That's quite obvious. And people who are, like Commander Lando, those who grew up in the shul and knew people who are victims, they're obviously going to be affected tremendously. How would you describe the effect among those, in the more outer circles? I mean, are they, and I'm not using these terms clinically, but are they exhibiting that they're depressed, or they can't understand, or they're trying to just wrap their heads around what this man did in walking in and trying and successfully murdering people? What is it that people are grappling with that they're turning to your counselors for?
Well, what we're seeing is that there really isn't an outer circle. Everyone is directly dealing with post-trauma, whether they feel they could have been a target or it's a close family or friend. This is all of Pittsburgh. This is everyone's synagogue.
And everything's so close, it could have been any building, synagogue or other,
exactly,
in the area.
Pittsburgh is different than New York in the sense that we're right now in Squirrel Hill. It's a 1 mile radius, and the Orthodox, Conservative, and Reformed communities all live here. So we are all very
And each
connected.
has a rich history. Each of the communities has a rich history.
Exactly. And when you think about circles of communities, our circles are all layered one on top of the other.
Right. That's one of the things that, again, you referenced New York. Some people in New York have difficulty comprehending or understanding how people from across religious denominations really knew each other and really interacted with each other and really served on committees together and, and projects together, etc. And every time we meet anybody, everyone is somehow connected to some of the people who were murdered this past Shabbos. Do you have enough people? Do you have enough volunteers or enough staff members to deal with all this?
We have plenty of staff members as well as volunteers. JFCS has been serving the community for 81 years, and we have a strong counseling services program led by our Director of Clinical Services, who I believe you'll be speaking with later, Stephanie Small. And we have received expert advice from the Israel Trauma Coalition. They sent over a team from Natal here. United Hatzalah just hopped on an airplane and came down here to help out. and we're taking cues from the One Family Fund on how to work with the bereaved and injured families. And we're taking advice from everyone, but please don't hop on an airplane.
Right.
We don't need more people in the space right now.
Right. Well, we made sure that we had our space covered so we wouldn't go ahead and intrude on anybody.
Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you very much for joining us, and continued success moving forward. This is obviously a very, very difficult time here in Pittsburgh, and hopefully everybody will get through it in whatever way they can, and continue to move forward as a community.
Thank you so much.
Rebecca Remsen, JFCS, coordinating mental health services in the aftermath of the murders of 11 of our Jewish brothers and sisters this past Shabbos. And Leora Zamek, who is a very familiar name to our audience, many people don't realize is living in Squirrel Hill. Would that be accurate? Is living in Squirrel Hill. First of all, great to see you.
Yes.
I regret, as I said to some of our earlier guests, that it's under these circumstances.
Yes.
But it's great to see you. And, of course, I apologize for not contacting you, but the second I heard the news, I said, oh, my gosh, you're here.
Yeah,
You're here in this
yeah.
community. And you're here how many months?
2 more for a total of 4 months. So
And-
this is like the halfway.
And what can you say about this neighborhood and community and how
I
different it
mean,
is from where you come from?
I already knew how welcoming and opening it was. I have not had to worry about where I'm going to eat a Shabbos or Yontif meal at all. It was never a concern. People are like, oh, who are you? You know, what are you doing here? Can we have you over? And already knowing that, this is unbelievable how they're able to come together, how they're able to be so comforting to each other. And I had no doubt because I already saw it
Right,
for the
the type
last
of
2
people they
months. Yeah.
Where were you, Shabbos?
My mom's sort of hating on me for it because I was in PZ and they told us there was an incident going on. I didn't know what it was.
Oh, meaning Paulette said it.
Yes, sorry. And I run a group for the 6th and 7th grade girls. I had 2 girls. They said their mothers were there, so I sent them to shul, and I left. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'll go home. And I came here to Shari Torah for the bar mitzvah, and my mom said, so you left a shul and you went to another shul. But it wasn't until I got here that I even knew what was going on.
Right, understood.
Yeah.
And it is still shocking and very, very hard to
Yes.
believe that it happened, and it happened in a neighborhood like this. And now you know firsthand just how great a neighborhood this is.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable.
Well, like I said, nice seeing you. Next time under better circumstances.
Yes.
And continued good luck to you. Another couple of
Thank
months
you,
in Squirrel Hill,
yes.
and then back to the
Back
New
to
Jersey
Teaneck,
area?
New Jersey, yeah.
All right. Leora Zamek, who's a resident of Squirrel Hill for these last couple of months. Very familiar, of course, to our JM and the AM audience. And now with great pleasure, although again, as I've said to other guests, this is not the way I thought we'd reunite. Rabbi Daniel Wasserman, of course, the spiritual leader of Shari Torah here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and that's where we are. We are in the atrium of Shari Torah,
Atrium.
in the entranceway of Shari Torah here in Pittsburgh. Rabbi Wasserman is our host, and I say welcome to JM in the AM.
Thank you, Nachum. Welcome to Pittsburgh, and again, sorry it's under these circumstances.
That's to say the least. It's amazing what we're learning this morning about your community.
It's also amazing that she thought she had to write it out for you and I pronounce
Well,
my name.
this is a concern of mine each time that people on my staff think I know who's sitting next to me. And I actually don't. In your case, I happen to know.
Excuse me.
We're learning a lot about your community. The words close knit and homey and small and tight and everybody knowing each other. All of these have been terms that people are using about Squirrel Hill.
And they're all true. You know, I've been here for almost 24 years.
Wow.
And I've many times said that Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh, is the American Jewish community's best kept secret. And I have said to people over and over again that, and by the way, the tragedy notwithstanding, it still applies, that if you're going to Eretz Yisrael, I'll put you on the plane. Otherwise, you really should come to Pittsburgh.
That's how great it is.
That's how great it is because of its people.
And you saw this immediately 24 years ago?
Oh, right away, right away. You know, I've said many times, maybe it's not exactly accurate, but trying to describe Squirrel Hill from my perspective, having grown up in the New York area, I said if you take Kew Garden Hills and you squeeze every drop of New York out of it, then you're getting close. but that's in terms of topography and the businesses here, you know, and the main street. But it's really the people. When I came, the first time I came, I saw people were genuinely nice. And it's not only not weird when you say hello to people in the street, not just community members, but it's weird if you don't.
People of all backgrounds.
Of all backgrounds, and certainly in the Jewish community. And people help each other, and the shuls are, for better or for worse, right on top of each other. My house is 6 houses away from Politzedek.
Right.
And people are always there for each other, not just this week. People are always there for each other.
Well, tell me about this week. Where were you when you heard what was going on Shabbos morning?
So, as you heard a moment ago, we had a bar mitzvah.
Right.
And Murray Avenue is one of the main streets, and so always sirens go by once in a while during davening. It went by once, and you could tell from the sound that they were speeding up Murray Avenue. And then a second time, and then a third time. And then a few of us looked at each other and said, something's going on. And I went downstairs, and because we had a bar mitzvah, there were a lot of people coming. Reports started coming in from people on the street. Our caretaker, who isn't Jewish, looked at the news. Some of the waitresses looked at the news, and information started coming in that seemed to indicate that Tree of Life was involved. We didn't know it was a Tree of Life. Was it across the street? Because there's a police station a block away. There's the Children's Institute across the street. Coach of the Steelers lives 800 yards away. So, like all events like this, a lot of the news media give out reports that they don't know. But it was clear something was happening, and in the midst of that, I looked outside for a moment, and I saw an armada of police cars. You know, two motorcycles and an SUV and a marked car. And I said, this is not a drill. So we just went into lockdown procedure, and I can't even, when we were preparing the procedure, I couldn't believe that there was such a thing we were doing. And when we did it, I couldn't believe there was such a thing that we were doing. And I stopped davening because I felt information was important. And it was most important that the children be where they need to be.
Right.
I stopped davening. I said, look, there are reports, Tree of Life, shooting, fatalities. We don't know. Don't talk about it because you don't have any information. Let's daven. And throughout the davening, any credible information that we had,
to update everybody.
I updated everybody. I shared with them our procedure. I told them we're locking the building down. That I didn't say who, but we do have people in the shul that are armed and have taken tactical training. You know, there are guys that walk around, and I've told them in the past, God forbid anything happens, don't you draw, because a target practice is not a room full of people. But we have people that literally take tactical training, and so again, we told everybody just relax, stay away from the windows just in case. Make sure the children are where they're supposed to be. And regularly throughout davening, I updated them when it was abundantly clear that it was in Tree of Life and there were fatalities. So it became a little bit more serious. But I didn't want to ruin the bar mitzvah. So
you have all these considerations to worry about.
Yeah, it was a balance.
And by the way, when you mentioned tactical training, just reminding everybody we're in the state of Pennsylvania, so the New Yorkers are not completely shocked by what you're saying.
Right.
If one were to walk from here to Tree of Life, it would take how long?
Take me 10 minutes.
Okay,
it might
so
take other people
a little longer. So just a perspective on everybody's close-knit here. Everybody's together, and you're very familiar with all the congregations of all backgrounds here in town. Right after Shabbos, I assume you jump into action.
So actually, before Shabbos, one of the teachers in the school, one of the rabbis here, Rabbi Admon, not only is on the Chaver Gadisha with us, but he worked with Zaka in Eretz Yisrael.
So he knows.
So he said to me, we got to go up there and start talking to people.
Right.
Honestly, we didn't even know that there was a command center for the community and for the police set up in the JCC because we didn't have our phones or anything. So after lunch, after the bar mitzvah.
And what you had in mind, obviously, is the sanctity
Right.
of the souls to
Correct.
make sure everything's done
So
properly.
we walked up there, and we began really in the dark trying to talk to the police, to the FBI, get them our names, take these. It turned out right after Shabbos, we went to the JCC, and Brad Orsini, our community security officer, who is former FBI, saw me there, knew immediately what we were there for, called me over, called Rabbi Admon over, spoke to the FBI, got us permission with him and an Israeli security officer to go to the scene, and we went from there.
Right, and this has been now a week of funerals. A week, I mean, you are leading the Chevra Kadisha, right? That's accurate.
I'm one of the leaders.
One of the
Chevra
leaders,
Kadisha.
so obviously lots to do, unfortunately.
Lots to do.
And
even
many
before
things
the
to balance,
funerals.
and their family
Yeah.
members and their considerations to keep in mind, and other leaders that I'm sure have input in all this.
100%.
So
Look,
it's a delicate
it's
situation.
very delicate, and there are many, many, many people, including one who just walked in, who you'll interview later, who have been working day and night just to reach out to people and to help people.
How many of the 11 have been laid to rest at this point?
If I remember correctly, I'm going to say 6. Don't hold me to it.
So there have been 6 funerals, including one funeral for the brothers who passed away
Right.
together.
For David and Cecil.
As they lived together and did everything together, they ended up dying together at the hands of this madman.
They did, and, Cecil came to shul here. Cecil, he lived.
You knew him.
I knew of all of them.
Right.
I knew many of them. Irv Younger had his store across the street. He's one of the election judges. Tuesday, we were going to kibitz all day. David and Cecil, again, Cecil, just a pure soul. We used to say hello to each other. I said, Rabbi, I'm come for Kiddush.
So you're affected by this as much as anybody else is?
Everyone is affected by it to greater and varying degrees. Everyone is affected by it. Having been in the scene, only 2 of us were in the scene before any bodies were removed. 4 of us, but 2 from the community.
Right.
Yes, we're all affected by it.
Rabbi Daniel Wasserman with us. He's hosting us at Shari Torah. We're live, JM and the AM, here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. There's an outpouring of, I call it brotherhood, unity. It's the reason we're here. We try not to overstay our welcome or overstep our boundaries. I know that there are people from around the world that are sending a lot of messages to you and a lot of encouragement and when you're on the receiving end of all this, when you're a community leader in a community that really can fend for itself, but at the same time is getting this outpouring of love, what is your perspective?
So, first, that's the weirdest thing for me. I haven't had a lot of time to read things and to watch news, but there's so much of it that it gets in, and I've been having this out-of-body experience that I'm sure others have been having, where, as you said, outpouring and people and can we come and buses and messages and GoFundMes and vigils and projected on the walls of the old city.
Right, that was something.
We're with Pittsburgh.
Right.
But you don't understand. That happens for events in New York, in Chicago, in LA. That doesn't happen for things in Squirrel Hill. Guess what?
No, it does.
It happens for things in Squirrel Hill. And secondly, and I tell my kids all the time, helping is what the person needs, what you want to do. And people have been so wonderful, and most people get that. Some don't. And,
I think it's commendable that our community mostly gets it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mostly.
I think it is commendable.
But some organizations have come, and we said thank you, especially in the context of the Chevra Kadisha.
Right.
We said thank you, but we don't need you. At 1 o'clock in the morning Saturday night, when we were communicating with the ME and the FBI, and you can imagine that there was some miscommunication, we spoke to the medical examiner himself, who lives here in Squirrel Hill, but when it got down to the guys on the ground, there were questions. We had 25 Chevra Kadisha members who weren't asked to come, they just heard, standing in the pouring rain at 1 o'clock in the morning, in the possibility that we may be involved in removing the bodies. So, Baruch Hashem, We have so many committed people, whether it's, men and women, correct. Whether it's the Chevra Kadisha, whether it's JFCS, whether it's the Federation, whether it's the shuls, so many committed people who, when they say, how are you and what do you need, they actually mean it and will actually do it. That it's unfortunate we have to use it, and we mobilized before this and we'll mobilize after this, but we didn't need it.
Squirrel Hill, one of the best kept secrets in American Judaism, huh?
And the best kept secret in the American Jewish community.
Also, because your name is Wasserman, I'm sure you have a perspective on the historical context of this episode. You know that synagogues, traditionally through the centuries, were unfortunately utilized very often by the enemy to murder Jews. It's no secret. And then in 2018 in the United States, we see that happen. You must have some thoughts about the historical context of that.
I do. However, with all of these issues, people have asked me, how you doing? And I've had one answer the last 5 days. Ask me in a few days and I'll figure it out.
Right.
I haven't had a chance to think. But I will tell you, when we say Avinu Malkeinu, so after the parts we all say together, we rip through the end to get to Avinu Malkeinu. And especially when I'm davening Nila, and I have the privilege of standing up in front of one and davening Nila. So I make sure to focus on a few lines. And often I sing them to the tune of Atikva. Avinu Malkeinu Selaman Harugim al Shem Kochecha. Selaman Tfuchim el Yichutecha. I do it because people were killed and slaughtered in your name. And, we think Eretz Yisrael, look,
Right.
1,594 pictures.
A full poster of pictures of people who were murdered because they were Jews in Israel.
There are going to be 11 more pictures
Right.
there. These are Kedoshim.
Right.
Mamish, 100%.
Right.
So you talk about historical perspective, you talk about Avar Achamim. These are Kedoshim, and in the context of the Chevra Kadisha, every time we were doing anything this week, not any person who has passed away, 105 years old, in their sleep, at home in their bed, there's care and kavod and respect and awe. But it's just magnified to the nth degree when you're dealing with Mamish Kedoshim.
Can only imagine. Finally, you made a comment to us yesterday about security in general and that people are vigilant in the aftermath of these episodes, and then unfortunately they tend to become more lackadaisical. Anything you think might be different both here and nationwide after this?
Initially, it'll be different. We ourselves are starting to, once the funerals will be done, starting to struggle with, okay, what do we have to do? Because, again, Brad Orsini, our security officer, gave a number of different congregations, gave our congregation a security briefing. And he started with, the chances are it's not going to happen
well,
here.
He's right, but...
And he's still right.
Right, correct.
But even then,
right.
I said, come on, Brad, there was Tilsh, there was bomb hammers, incidents. I said to him yesterday at one of the funerals, I said, you got to change your presentation because it did happen. The rabbi of the synagogue, because of one of his presentations, he said, I never carried a phone on Shabbos.
Right.
I carried the phone on Shabbos, and I believe he's the one who called 911.
Right.
I keep a phone near I don't carry it around.
Right.
But I keep
In the
a phone
stender.
in the stender. I keep a phone.
And we should tell the rabbis those phones should be on.
Yeah,
you don't want them to have to be turned on Shabbos. Right?
And just because booting up.
Correct.
Right? I keep one next to the IED. My brain is so scrambled. AED. Ima, by the way, this raspiness in the voice, I know you're thinking I didn't get enough sleep.
You think she's concerned?
I promise I got enough sleep, and I just lied to 1.5 million listeners of Nachum Seeg. So,
but for the sake of your mother, it's
right.
worth lying.
So initially we'll do it.
And
one of the
we'll
questions
see.
we'll have to ask is this long term. Have we crossed the line? My wife and I have discussed a number of times when these things have come up. Should I be wearing Kevlar under my jacket?
Right.
Suddenly that discussion's not so crazy. Last story, and we could go on for hours, and there are other people here. When I was a Rav in Worcester, Massachusetts, so the shul, you walked in, the ladies section was in back, the men's section was in the front. And there was a guy who would, whenever I made a drasha, would stand with his back against the mechitza and his hands against the wall. Nobody knew why he did it. I knew why he did it. His hand was on his gun because he felt if everybody was so focused, drushas, my drushas. And
Yeah,
not
I mean,
thinking
who's
about
not
anything else,
focused?
or asleep, which
Might also happen.
if everybody else and somebody walks in the back. So this is 1990, and everybody thought he was crazy. After 9/11, he's not so crazy. After Pittsburgh this week,
He's really
he's
not
so crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Good message.
The
sir.
answer is
very good
I
message.
don't know, but ultimately, God will protect us. We have to be careful, but it's all in God's hands.
Thank you for hosting us,
Thank you for coming.
and we appreciate that. And next time for a good occasion, please, God.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Rabbi Daniel Wasserman, of course, spiritual leader here at Shari Torah in Squirrel Hill, as we do what the Jewish Unity Initiative does, which is be on the spot to express our love, solidarity, brotherhood, and sisterhood for our brothers and sisters, especially after a week like this, after a horrific episode, the murder of 11 of our brothers and sisters here in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania community. Nina Butler, who's a longtime friend, and not only is her name familiar to our audience, but of course her husband, Judge Danny Butler, also a very familiar name to our audience, one of the first people, in addition to Rabbi Wasserman, that we contacted once this episode occurred. And she's been coordinating God knows how many things from her home as people express their concern, want to do whatever they could possibly do. And we welcome her to JM and the AM. Thank you for being here this morning.
It's an honor to have you in our community.
I
We are
appreciate
usually
that.
such a welcoming community, so it's so against our grain to tell anyone, please don't come.
Right.
And that's the message I'm trying to deliver as gently and as sincerely as possible all this week, that please come, but maybe not
But
this
please,
week.
right. And in fact, people should keep that in mind, that maybe in subsequent weeks it would be a better thing for them to.
Yes, totally. We welcome people. We pride ourselves on being the most welcoming community. We always tell young couples who are moving to town and young families, you won't have to cook your first year because you will be invited out every single Shabbos, and it's true.
And you said to me in the first 5 minutes that we spoke on Sunday, you said to me, I need to remind the world that this is a really amazing, incredible, peaceful community, and they shouldn't think
Peaceful,
of
safe.
this. They shouldn't and safe. They shouldn't think of this when they think of Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh. Meaning
Right,
this, meaning the episode on
totally.
Shabbos. Obviously.
Absolutely. When anybody comes to visit, you know you can come to my house because the door's open. I don't lock it. It's that safe. It's kind of like going back to the 50s when you come
Right.
to Pittsburgh.
Mayberry, I guess they would say. So you're in Pittsburgh how many years?
42, so now
Okay.
I'm reached that point where I'm here longer than where I grew up.
Right. So you're here over 40 years. So you could attest to all the things that you've said with great proof and
Yes.
and testimony that in
Yes.
fact this is a peaceful, wonderful, incredibly close-knit and phenomenal community. And many of
Yes.
our guests so far this morning have said that. Any specific messages regarding this week, in addition to if you're considering coming, check with us first, because we'll guide you properly.
I have a few examples of how close this is that I think your audience would appreciate.
Sure.
One is that our different Orthodox shuls all get together for Shabbos Shuva and Shabbos Hagadol drashas. We all the
One drasha?
drasha for everyone, that we all go. We rotate which shul, and whichever rabbi is hosting it, the rabbis of the other shuls are the ones who are speaking. And we all get together in one shul, so there aren't competing speakers at competing times for those drushos. It's just because we're that kind of close-knit community. And frankly, hats off to Rabbi Wasserman for initiating that whole effort when he brought Rabbi Beryl Wein to town to speak, and that started the whole thing. And it's been going on for years and years, and it's a real source of pride. It shows you the
What a
outfits we
trend.
have here.
There
I'm
are people
telling
listening
you.
right now. I think you're joking, frankly.
Well, that's why I'm trying to find ways to express to people that this isn't a dangerous gunslinging town. This is a super peaceful, a wonderful, idyllic island where not only do Orthodox, conservative, and Reform people get along, and yes, we do serve on different committees together.
Right.
We partner. Actually, we have a community-wide, cross the denominations, Shavuos Learn-a-thon at the JCC. I mean, there's things that happen in Pittsburgh that don't happen anywhere
Yeah,
else.
these things are unheard of anywhere else.
I know. It's really something. I mean, I love that we have Reform and unaffiliated Jews who are listening to our Orthodox rabbis on Shavuos night and learning with them. And sure, they might not feel comfortable walking through the doors of our Orthodox shuls,
Right.
but they'll walk into the JCC, and that's where those rabbis are for their little envelope of time before they come running back to their shul for their all-night learning.
We're on a strip here, Murray Avenue, which is also emblematic of how close-knit, wonderful, and peaceful this community is.
But did you notice all the languages going up and down Murray Avenue?
Many of them.
You have restaurants of all different
From
nationalities.
every country on earth.
Well, you have to understand, we are 10 minutes from the hospitals. We are 10 minutes from the universities. And by the way, some fabulous universities. We have Carnegie Mellon with the driverless cars here, which is really a sight to see.
Right.
And then we are 10 minutes from any kind of shopping. We are we're 10 minutes from downtown. When my husband works in city court, he can run home for lunch and be back in court in time.
And you have a connection to the kosher pizza shop, so that's
yes,
so
I
that's
do.
even more beneficial to you and your husband. You're very well connected.
Yes. So because we are so close to everything, this is living in the city here, even though it's got a warm feeling.
I was commenting to my staff that it's unusual in that the Jewish community here and a couple other places in the United States is still so close to downtown, is still so close to the center of town, and this is one of the places where that's
right.
the fact.
And someone from the Evo Institute did a study on Squirrel Hill because they said it was one of the last American shtetls because you have the butcher, baker, and candlestick maker right on this,
on the same strip.
Yeah, right. You were at our home, so just 3 doors away.
Yeah, you're right around the corner from
We have
everything.
the major kosher store,
Right.
the regular grocery store, the post office, the library, the bank. It's all right here, walking distance, very safe, and we all get along except for this one horrible person.
And as the rabbi pointed out, a lot of the people that were murdered on Shabbos by that madman actually had businesses and interacted on Murray Avenue on a regular basis.
So a friend of mine was just coming through from Montreal, coming back from Shabbos, and she was coming through Global Entry, and she brought me a present. So coming through, what can I say? There's certain things that Montreal has, and I will mention what. So she comes through Global Entry, and they say, did you bring food? She said, well, yes. Where are you from? Well, she said, I'm from Squirrel Hill, USA. And the guard said, oh, honey, what did you bring? She said, I brought comfort chocolate. So she said, go through, it's fine.
Oh, my
You can
gosh.
go
And
through.
by the way, that type of scene is being replicated everywhere when people hear that. And not only that, not only people from Squirrel Hill, people see yarmulkes, people see women who are noticeably Jewish, and they are offering condolences and
Oh,
going.
my goodness. I've gotten calls from the person who cuts my hair. I was at the ZOA dinner a night ago. The waitresses came up to hug me. Well, because I know them, but they each had to come and express how they feel. When you walked into this shul this morning, did you notice there were flowers on their door? There are flowers on the door of the Jewish bookstore. This is in addition to the memorials that are
Right.
going up over by the shul.
Right.
But absolutely, all of us, any group of Jews that you get together with in Squirrel Hill will tell you about all the non-Jews in their life who are reaching out with so much love. We have a big family, a clan, that moved here last summer from France. And I spoke to, there were reporters who were looking for people to talk to. So I spoke to the mother, the matriarch of this clan, the next morning. And her reaction is, for this I moved from France? Really? I can't tell you how proud I am to show her and her family, as I spoke to her family yesterday, how different America is reacting to acts of anti-Semitism. We are hearing a loud roar, not just a few mentions. We're hearing a roar from the Jewish and non-Jewish community.
And public
against-
officials.
Absolutely.
Your mayor is amazing.
All of our public officials.
your governor is
have been
amazing.
Wonderful, just coming out so strongly against anti-Semitism that although this is horrific, really horrific, we feel that we're enveloped with so much love that it's really the takeaway that I'm walking into Shabbos with.
It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listener-sponsored digital radio around the world on the web at NachumSegal.com, on the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, on the beloved NSN app. Nina Butler is here, one of the community leaders, whether she likes it or not. I give her the title. And this Shabbos you just mentioned, this is going to
Yes,
be an
sir.
interesting Shabbos in town.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this will be one of real brotherhood and sisterhood and people coming together. We're encouraging everyone to be in shul nationwide, but here,
Yes.
everyone's going to be coming out to be together, I'm sure.
It's true, and I was heartened to see that on Facebook some people are posting reaching out to unaffiliated Jews to say, if you come to my shul, you can sit next to me. I'll take care of you. Just please, please come.
Wow.
And that's really beautiful.
Anything else you want to tell us about this week specifically? Or we want to just concentrate on the positive elements of this amazing neighborhood? Because one of the positives of this week, frankly, is not just the outpouring. It's also, I can imagine how many people here came together just to solve all the problems that had to be solved, and how people are coming together to reassure everybody in town that we're going to be okay over here.
Right. Well, we so appreciate hearing from Jews all over the country who are so eager to get up and just run here. Thank you, Rabbi Wasserman, for mentioning the guys from different Chevra Kadisha organizations who just got on planes and came here. And these aren't people who are paid to do it. These are all volunteers
Right.
who have big families. They left their families, they left their jobs, and it wasn't for a few hours. They were here for several days waiting to hear if help was needed. And boy, hats off to Rabbi Wasserman for getting them all together after they'd been here for days and saying, we appreciate that you're here, but you know what? Our guys need to do this.
Right.
And you're right, you guys have more experience. It's going to take our guys longer. They're going to have more shilas. But this is something we need to do in order to heal. So please understand that we appreciate you being here, but you can go home now.
Wow.
Yes, it's a real special community, and I appreciate that people have been, I just came from the fire station where they have mountains of food that's been brought to them.
They don't know what to do with it, huh?
Police stations say they have lines out the door of people who want to come and give them hugs. It's that kind of place.
It's amazing. Well,
Yes.
but we've been introduced to Squirrel Hill, unfortunately,
Yes.
for this reason. You've been asking us for years to come on out here,
Yes.
but it took this.
Well, you made Uri Butler so happy. I have to say, it was if the biggest rock star in the country was in town when JM and the AM walked in his front door.
Well, I got a little suspicious.
Can't describe the hug.
I got suspicious when Uri said he's not showing up this morning, but I'll take your word for it that he's very happy we're in town.
Yeah.
I will take your word for it. Thank you, Nina Butler.
Sure, my
to you
pleasure.
and your wonderful husband, Judge Danny Butler. Continue your amazing role, leadership role in the Squirrel Hill community. JM and the AM introducing Stephanie Small of Jewish Family Services to our global audience. Stephanie, a pleasure to welcome you to JM and the AM.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I can only imagine all the different roles that you and your staff have this week. And it really started, no joke, right after this episode began, because almost immediately, as this command center is being set up and families need to be dealt with and police need to and first responders need to speak to them, you and your staff are already in action, correct?
So I was actually in lockdown here at Shari Torah with Rabbi Wasserman. So
Wow.
I didn't get to be there from the beginning.
Right.
But Jordan Golan and Dana Gold, our CEO and COO of Jewish Family and Community Services, are amazing. And they were there from moment two. They got a call. They were at the JCC. They were with the families. Other colleagues of mine, Sandy and Leslie, were there. And they were there when they actually got word that one of our colleagues' husbands was the one who was shot. And they were the ones who brought her to the hospital and told her and stayed with her. So we have that kind of agency to begin with, that we're all so close together, and for the rest of the community.
And we pray for the speedy recovery of those injured in the attack, of course. We mentioned earlier and spoke about the grieving and the services that are provided to help people, get through that process. Is that the main concentration of what the Jewish Family Services is doing this week, or are there many other things that are happening at the same time?
For the most part, we are really concentrating on the community mental health. We're providing walk-in hours at the JCC from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day through Saturday, and again Monday through Saturday, hopefully next week.
Are people taking advantage of it?
There are. I was at a community Tehillim thing last night, and one woman actually came over and told me that she went over, and she said, I didn't think it was for me. And I said, no, it's exactly for you. It's for anyone in this community, because the entire community was affected. Everybody was affected. You've heard from Nina, you've heard from Danny, from Rabbi Wasserman, you've heard from everybody how the community is so cohesive. And so everybody was affected. So we have mental health going on. We've connected United Hatzalah and the Israel Trauma Coalition with organizations all over. We've had counselors go into the Hillel JUC. We're having counselors go into different portions of the JCC. You name it, we've put a counselor there. You have a request, we're putting you there. Because everybody needs to grieve and everybody needs to process it. Because what people don't realize about this is, and I learned this from the Israel Trauma Coalition, in an irrational situation, in an abnormal situation, every reaction is normal. But people don't know that.
They
So
have
I'm
to be
hoping
told
people
that.
do. Exactly.
Stephanie Smalls with us, Jewish Family Services. So last night we pay a visit to the memorial right outside of Tree of Life, and I notice, as everyone does, people of diverse backgrounds, people who do seem like residents, and you can get a feel that there are people walking by who feel they want to pay respects, etc. Many of them crying. I mean, this goes way beyond our community, it seems. This is something that everybody feels a part of, even though obviously it wasn't their community directly that was targeted.
Correct. Everybody feels it. Everybody feels it. The sheer number of diverse people in Squirrel Hill, as you've heard, is amazing. You know, I grew up in Far Rockaway. I'm not a native. I'm a Far Rockaway gal, and I've been here for 19 years, and the differences are huge. But it's on my block alone. I have the former mayor's wife. I have every kind of family you'd imagine. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And to give a quick plug, my grandfather, he should rest in peace, is Rabbi Ephraim Sturm from National Council of Young Israel.
Wow.
And I just know that
I remember him fondly.
which is why I wanted to mention him. I knew he was such an amazing
We didn't call him
man.
Ephraim.
No, I know. And he was such an inspiration to me, and I know that he would look at all of what we're doing. He visited here many years ago, and he just
He
fell in love
loved
with
going
it.
to Jewish communities around the country.
He loved it.
I
He
mean, that
did.
was like his whole, you know.
He loved it, and he came here and he fell in love, and he met old students of his who come to the shul, everything, and he just found, like we all do, the intense love this entire community has for each other, and we're so blessed to be here.
I'm so glad you stopped by this morning.
Me too.
Stephanie Small, Kol HaKavod, Far Rockaway lady who's now a Squirrel Hill representative, and a good one. Thank you very much. Lou Weiss is with us. Lou Weiss is an occasional writer for the Wall Street Journal. He is the father of Barry Weiss, staff editor and writer for the New York Times, and Lou is a local carpet salesman. So those of you here in the Squirrel Hill community who'd like to replace your carpet, we have met up with the right person this morning. Welcome to JM in the AM.
Thank you for having me.
You wrote an article, Amalek Comes to Pittsburgh. It's obvious from the article that you were very familiar with the majority, if not all, of the victims in this attack. Is that correct?
I knew five.
Five.
Oh, actually, actually six.
So 6 of the 11, so a good number of them. And how do you explain it? How do you go through an episode like this and see people that you know murdered in cold blood and explain how it is that Amalek has come to this neighborhood?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at it in the context of what goes on in Europe and what goes on in Israel, and it's come here. We never expected it here, but anti-Semitism has not gone away. And this guy, it's about as clear an analog as you can possibly find, because what was Amalek doing? The people in the back. People in the back that
The
were
innocents.
in the innocence, and specifically in the chapel at the Tree of Life.
Right.
Those people were sitting in the back. They were the older people and special needs people. The people in the front, actually, some of the people got out. And it's crazy you're talking to Nina Butler about everything else. You're asking me about the terror stuff, which I know very little. But it's evil, and it's nothing you can say except that.
I pointed out earlier that those who know their Jewish history know that the synagogue, unfortunately, for centuries, very often was used to murder Jews. It's hard to believe, especially for those who are in the Holocaust generation, and there are members of the community here who still vividly remember that period of time, to believe that that could happen in the United States in 2018. But your point is that we I don't want to say we have to get used to it, but we have to acknowledge that this is a scourge. This is a disease that's not going to go away.
No, it's not. And I mean, certainly the most tragic part is the loss of life. Somewhere under that is the sense of violation that it took place at a synagogue, and be able to walk in any synagogue on Shabbat, almost any synagogue, just walk in with the door unlocked. It's a pleasure. I mean, this is one of my I'm a Share Torah. This is one of my shuls, and if I can get up early enough, I make it here. And I try to make it for Rabbi Wasserman's Dvar Torah, and And, I'm a Reformed Jew. I understand very little of the davening, but I come here because I like the people, and B, I like to hear what Rabbi Wasserman has to say about what's going on.
We're learning a lot about this unique neighborhood, frankly, because a lot of places that are tuned in right now are not don't have the crossover that you are describing in terms of people of all backgrounds feeling comfortable everywhere.
I take it a little farther. I mean, I actually wrote a piece for the Journal a few years ago about Confessions of a Synagogue Hopper. And I actually belong to...
Not a derogatory term.
No. I belong to a Reform congregation where I grew up. And Beth Shalom with Temple Sinai. Got to give proper credit to Rabbi Gibson. And Beth Shalom for when my kids were going to day school. And I belong here. And there's a Chabad minion that's fantastic with a singing psychiatrist that does the Torah commentary. And I get discounted dues at some of these places, but here I pay full dues for me.
Rabbi Wasserman gives you no break, huh?
No, well, it's it's a wonderful thing from that standpoint, and just to be accepted everywhere, and it's just again, I can't top what Nina Butler said. I mean, I've probably learned more about Judaism at her Shabbos table than any class I've ever taken.
Lou Weiss is here, occasional writer for the Wall Street Journal. Are you here your whole life?
Yes.
Born and bred in Squirrel Hill.
Born and bred. I've lived my entire life within about a mile of where we're sitting right now.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with communities that are outside of Pittsburgh, right? You're somewhat familiar with the differences between your community and the ones that we speak to on a regular basis.
Not so much, really. I mean,
because I'm wondering if you're as shocked as I am when you're describing the way Squirrel Hill is, and you see my surprise when we talk about this relationship you have with everybody across the board. I wonder if you realize that outside of this community, it's not very common what you're describing.
Intellectually, I know that it's different in other places,
right.
But in my bones, I just don't expect any different and feel any different. And we're lucky. We're lucky to be here, but it's no, I don't think it's. I think it's like this everywhere. But I mean, I know that it's not because people say it's not, but I don't know why it shouldn't be.
Lou wrote the article, of course, for the Journal on Malek Comes to Pittsburgh that we referenced earlier. How do you think the Jews, our brothers and sisters in Israel, who go through this a lot, and if they don't go through it directly, obviously, we know how often it happens there. How do you think they view what happened here this past Shabbos?
I think I don't know. They'd have to speak for that,
right.
But I think that it's nothing that they're not familiar with, and it's nothing that they don't know how to deal with. And I think that here, what the response we're seeing is somewhat like the response in Israel, because they see it. It's a stiffening of your resolve, and a stiffening of your spine, and saying, you know what, I'm not giving into this, and we're going to make it through. It's very painful. I mean, I was at the funeral the other day. I'm going to a funeral tomorrow. It's something to say that this is what it is to be Jewish when you carry these values in the world of concern for the downtrodden and personal and freedom right. of the people, and Jewish values. I mean, people, they respond because they hate those values. They hate those things.
Hard for us to comprehend that, but
they do, and we're not bowing down to anyone else's idols, and they present that, and and frankly, what's gratifying is in the United States, the response is so different, and the response is so wonderful, and I mean that's the difference between the United States, I think, in Europe, and I think that in Israel, I don't know that they're surprised, but we've never been tested quite like this in this country.
Rabbi Wasserman, as an aside, will all the funerals have been conducted by the time Shabbos starts? We don't know yet. We think they will be, that by the time Shabbos begins, the funerals will all have taken place. You're writing for the Journal. Are you a fan of the Journal?
It's my Bible for many years. Basically my whole adult life. The craziest thing is my daughter went to Columbia and was fighting against the Middle East Studies.
Do you know who she writes for?
She writes for the New York Times now, yes. But prior to that, though, she was at the Wall Street Journal for 10 years.
Thank God.
And off and on, and she worked for Tablet Magazine as their politics editor. She's actually, it's crazy over her time. She's been in Israel a lot of times. She was at the Rockefeller, but she worked for Haaretz, the Forward, the New York Sun, and she started there. The day she started, they said they're going out of business in a month. The Journal and now the Times.
Does she know her current employer does not always do us the best of favors?
You know, I think it's interesting. They brought her in, and she and Brett Stevens, who's her mentor.
He's on the op-ed page.
Yeah, and she's there too.
Right.
They, I think that they realized after the last election that they were missing a whole chunk of America,
Right.
even though they're both.
They never replaced Bill Safire.
No, never. Although, I mean, maybe they thought so with David Brooks, who's
Right.
that, and Brett certainly I think is
Right.
is a wonderful writer and a wonderful commentator, and I mean they basically give her free rein to write what she wants to write. And I mean, she was interviewed at a Reform congregation a couple weeks ago by the rabbi, and he talked about it a little bit, you know, because she had thought about going to rabbinic school at one point. And she said, basically, I'm writing Dvar Torahs that they're putting in the paper.
They're
I mean,
printing it, huh?
She's written, you know, she's written on Rosh Hashanah. She's written on Yom Kippur. She's written about, you know, obviously she wrote about what happened here this week.
Right.
And she's, I think, has a decent background, and it's nice they let her do that. And it's, you know, there are not many of her, I would say, at the paper, too. But no, there's probably there's more. There's more.
The public impression that it's too.
No. There's more, and I mean, and frankly, it's to the credit of the publisher, Sulzberger, and James Bennett, who I know is her editor, that was two of the people that brought her there. And I think that it's to their credit that they say, you know what, we're missing something here, and they want to challenge their readers. I mean, the readers are not happy. I mean, if you read some of the comments, they,
Right.
you know, but she's, I think, doing a good job there. But I was more excited. I'm excited she's there, but when she was at the Journal, it was a special excitement because that's my place. And I don't know, when I sent in an article, someone read it there a while ago, and they put it in. This is the first time I've ever wrote anything that's serious,
Right.
really. You know,
And very timely.
Yeah.
Lou Weiss, the daughter we reference, is Barry Weiss, staff editor and writer at the New York Times. He is an occasional writer for the Wall Street Journal, and an honor to speak with you this morning. Thank you
my
for being
pleasure.
here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. We are here in Pittsburgh, and you know why. Jewish Unity Initiative has arrived in Squirrel Hill to just express our solidarity, let people here know that we care, let people know that their brothers and sisters around the world who felt the collective pain of this terrible and horrific episode from Shabbos and the murder of 11 of our brothers and sisters here in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's 18 minutes after 8 o'clock. More coming up. Keep it right here at JM in the AM.
Acheinu kol beis Yisroel, Acheinu kol beis Yisroel, Hanesunim b'tzara uvashiveyo, Acheinu kol beis Yisroel. Acheinu kol beis Yisroel, Acheinu kol beis Yisroel, Ha'oimdim bein bayom uvein bayabosho, Acheinu kol beis Yisroel. Oyamokoi Yerachem Aleim ve'yotziyei Mitzoro nirvoch u'miyafeilo Lego yirok u'mishibud li yigulo Oyamokoi Yerachem Aleim ve'yotziyei Mitzoro lirvocho u'miyafeilo Lego yirok u'mishibud li yigulo Pashto bagolo uvizman kori yigiv pashto bagolo uvizman kori v'noy margo Achenu kol beis Yisroel Achenu kol beis Yisroel Ho'oim din beit bayom Uvein bayav Hosho Achenu kol beis Yisroel Ho'yamokoi Yerachei Maleyem v'yoytzigigigigay Mitzoro nirvochok u'miyafeilo Lego yirok u'mishiyibu li yigulo Oyamokoi Yerachei Maleyem v'yoytzigigigay Mitzoro lirvochok u'miyafeilo Lego yirok u'mishiyibu li yigulo Pashto bagolo uvizman kori Pashto bagolo uvizman kori
JM in the AM. Achenu is certainly one of our themes. That is an understatement as we continue to express our love and solidarity with our brothers and sisters here in Squirrel Hill, Pennsylvania. With us live via telephone, keeping in mind that Tuesday is Election Day, is Jake Adler. He's New York State Policy Director for Teach NYS, and he is with us to remind us that we have a voice. We have a voice when it comes to the public officials who represent us in this country. Jake, welcome back to JM in the AM.
Nachum, thanks for having me, and thanks for being where you are today. I appreciate it. On behalf of the larger qual, we all appreciate what you're doing.
I greatly appreciate that, and this episode is not it is not out of context to discuss this coming Tuesday on a day like today. Because we want, I have been, I don't know if you agree, you'll tell me if you do, I have been extremely impressed with the way the public officials of this area, where we are now in Pittsburgh, have dealt with this week's tragedy. And we want people who represent us well and who are compassionate and who do their job well and are there at the forefront on our issues. Would you not agree?
Yeah, 100% I would agree with that. The tragedy, obviously, on Shabbos, the Fest Shabbos, was unfathomable. I think I don't think anyone can really come to grips with that yet. But while we have that fresh in our minds, it's important to realize that public reactions and the tone and the public officials' responses to issues like this and issues that are much more mundane than this are extremely important. And kind of what comes next is also should be foremost in our minds, and I think that's really where civic engagement and voting and the whole process really comes into play. So Tuesday is a chance for all of us with elections on Tuesday, certainly with those of us in New York, to kind of come out en masse and make our voices heard. That our community does vote, our community does pay attention to what's going on, and our community, frankly, does engage in the civic process and wants wants and needs certain things out of their government, including security funding, including, a variety of other issues. It all begins with voting on Tuesday, I'd say.
Oh, it's so true. And there's so much of a difference that people can make when they engage with their public officials, when they get to know them, when they make sure to alert them about our issues, etc. But all of it starts by getting the right people into office. And as you remind us, that happens this coming Tuesday. Jake Adler is with us. By the way, Jake, the One Israel Fund, as an example, has asked everybody who comes to their dinner on Election Day night to vote first. Make sure to vote and then come to the dinner. Wouldn't you love to see all of our educational institutions and all of the different organizations that are going to be active with events and with their regular day on Tuesday tell their constituents, vote first and then come into work, vote first and then come to school, vote first and then come and enjoy our event?
Yeah, 100%. There's always been this debate in the larger kind of political world as to whether Election Day and Primary Day should be a holiday.
Right.
If people should if it should be recognized as a federal holiday. I think, certainly within our community needs to really reevaluate the way it views voting, voter registration, and Election Day as well. And, if it was up to me, that day would kind of be set aside as sacrosanct specifically for voting. I understand people have jobs, and I understand that there's so many important organizations benefiting the qual, but we have to understand the importance of actually voting, and I would encourage every organization to understand that and not to stack the deck of events that day going forward, because it just makes it more difficult for everyone to vote. Voting impacts everything. Voting impacts security in schools and schools, and from closer to home, voting directly impacts the tuition crisis. So if we want to take these issues seriously, which certainly we all talk like we do, I think we have to reevaluate how we're looking at the registration process, how we're looking at the voter engagement process, and really how we're looking at primary days and election days. Those are important days.
Be there, everybody, this Tuesday. Jake Adler, the New York State Policy Director of Teach NYS, reminds us. I remind everybody. We'll certainly remind everybody on Tuesday. Get out and vote, and encourage everybody in your families to vote. Encourage everybody in your communities to vote. Rabbis, encourage everybody this Shabbos in your congregations to vote. It all begins at the ballot box. Jake, great job you guys are doing. Thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thanks, Nachum. Keep up the great work.
Appreciate that very much. Jake Adler, who is, of course, with the Teach NYS and as New York State Policy Director, with a very important reminder for us here at JM in the AM. More coming up. We're in Pittsburgh. We're in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. We are showing love, concern, solidarity, brotherhood, sisterhood, Jewish unity with our brothers and sisters here in Squirrel Hill in the aftermath of the Shabbos massacre that everyone continues to try and recover from all through this week of funerals and Shiva in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. As you heard Rai Wasserman mention, those funerals will hopefully be completed before Shabbat, and this will be a Shabbos of great unity, not only in Squirrel Hill, but for all of Jewish people worldwide, as we encourage everybody to get to Shul this Shabbos, to emphatically state that we will continue to take great advantage of the amazing freedom of religion that we have in this incredible country. Make sure to do that this Shabbos simply by showing up in synagogue. More coming up. You're listening to JM in the AM.
Shalom Taiva Uviracha Uviracha Chaim 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 Chesed Virachamim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael Amecha Shalom Shalom Uviracha Hamivorech Esamo Yisrael Hamivorech Esamo Yisrael
JM in the AM. One of the things we pray for, peace, shalom. Couple of family connections here to announce in the Squirrel Hill Shari Torah congregation. First of all, the historic rabbi, before the days of the historic Rabbi Wasserman here, was my father's cousin, Rabbi Pupko, who made such a mark on this, right, you'd agree? Made quite a mark on this community. An understatement, Rabbi Wasserman says. And yesterday, speaking of family, yesterday was the bris of my great-nephew, the first baby after 10 years since my father's passing, and there have been, thank God, many, many babies since then, the first one to be named Zev Siegel. So Rabbi Zev Siegel now has a real namesake. There are many Zevs and many Zevis in the family already, as you can imagine. Thank God, as I said, thank God. But this is the first child who is named Zev Siegel, which brings a smile to all of our faces, of course. Couple of things. First of all, we're made possible this morning, of course, by a generous sponsorship by the wonderful people at Bedford on Park. It's one of the reasons we're able to broadcast today from Pittsburgh, and I thank our friends at Bedford on Park as they continue to provide a delicious lunch and dinner to our amazing and incredible New Yorkers and those visiting New York every single day. You can enjoy a great lunch, a wonderful dinner, including that 32-ounce prime cowboy cut steak, which rivals the Nina Butler steak presentation of last night. Say it again? Just on a Wednesday. Just our regular Wednesday steaks, right? And you can enjoy Chef Alex's incredible dishes. Plus, I remind you that now as we get closer to the end of 2018, all the holiday parties and Hanukkah celebrations and Thanksgiving family dinners are being planned. Make sure to keep in mind Bedford on Park. They'll do an amazing job for you and your clients and your staff at 61 East 34th Street in New York City. 61 East 34th Street in New York City. They're also a great location for Shever Brachos in the heart of Midtown. So again, Bedford on Park, your holiday party's got to be scheduled now. Your Hanukkah celebration has to be scheduled now. Your Thanksgiving dinner has to be scheduled now. They're at 61 East 34th Street, bedfordkitchen.com, bedfordkitchen.com. Set it up today with our friends at Bedford on Park, so you are all set for the final months of 2018. Also, I want to remind everybody the One Israel Fund Dinner is Tuesday. We just mentioned it in the context of Election Day as we continue to strengthen and want to continue to strengthen the communities of the United States, like this one, Squirrel Hill, that has gone through everything that they've gone through this week. We also remind you that we have to strengthen and continue to build the state of Israel. And One Israel Fund does a remarkable job doing that. Log on to oneisraelfund.org. OneIsraelFund.org. Get your reservations in for Tuesday night and support their efforts. Tuesday night will be an amazing dinner. Caroline Glick is the keynote speaker, and we highly recommend you be there for the One Israel Fund Dinner. Also, keep in mind, earlier in the week, we spoke with our friends at OHEL. They've got their big event coming up November the 11th. Go to ohelfamily.org. ohelfamily.org for information on that. And I do remind you that we have a full day of amazing programming, including a live lunch that we're going to be doing from this spot. We're going to be right here. Live lunch 11 until 12, at which point Avrami's going to take over at noon so we could hit the road back to New York. But 11 until 12, we'll wrap up this entire trip, and there'll be many themes and many thoughts that I can guarantee you. That'll start at 11 o'clock. Between now and then, at 9 a.m., Unlocking Greatness with Charlie Harari. At 9:30, Spin Class, pre-election day with Michael Fragan. At 10 a.m., Jew in the City Speaks. Allison Josephs has guest Jonathan Greenstein of Judaica House. He will be Allison's guest. And at 10:30, That's Life with Miriam L. Wallach. She'll discuss women and prayer with Rebbetzin Dr. Adina Schmidman. Women and prayer. We encourage all the women and all the men to pray together and be together in synagogues this coming Shabbos. All right, more coming up. We're in Pittsburgh, everybody. We are at the Squirrel Hill Shari Torah congregation as the amazing and incredible Jewish Unity Initiative rolls on. And Nina Butler, who we introduced earlier as a community leader. We thank Nina. We thank Judge Danny Butler. We thank Rabbi Wasserman, of course, and my staff, including Avrami and Yoni and ZK and Mark Zamek and Yigal Siegel and Simon Jacob, our chairman, who called in earlier to say how proud he is that the Jewish Unity Initiative is in Pittsburgh today. And all of our families, we thank everybody for being part of this amazing effort. Nina Butler we introduced as a community leader earlier, and she's back on the air with us. A lot of unique things happened this week.
Yes.
Not all of them sad. Some of them silver linings, I guess we can call them.
Yes.
What do you have in mind when I mention silver linings?
I have a few stories for you.
Okay.
One is, I think it paints a picture of our city to tell you that at the JCC, we have walk-in counseling, drop-in counseling from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. that you heard about already.
Right.
But what she didn't tell you is that the JFCS, Jewish Family and Children's Service, is having assistance from other mental health professionals coming in to assist.
From outside Pittsburgh.
Not only outside Pittsburgh, of course, agencies in Pittsburgh. So they have to come up with what to put on a name tag. Just what do you put on the name tag? So, of course, this is for counseling, so you put the first name, not the
Right.
last name, right? First name, nice and big.
Right.
But then under there, do you write the agency that the person came from?
Oh, these are the professionals that are helping
right.
out.
What do you put on the professional's name tag?
Right, so it says
So
Bill,
it
and
says
now what do you
Bill.
write?
What do you
Now-
put underneath?
Okay.
Well, you have to remember we're in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Literally.
So under everyone's name is just the word helper. Someone walked in and looked at these name tags and said, "Are you all from the same family?" And you know what? You have to think about the answer to that. And I think all your
We are all
all
from
of your all of your listeners know the answer to that question. We
Now-
are the same
Now,
family.
you have to satisfy my curiosity.
Sure.
We were in your house last night.
Yes, sir.
How close is it to Mr. Rogers' house?
A couple blocks.
He literally.
Yeah, this is his neighborhood. We bump into him on
So
Murray
it's
Avenue.
not-
We did, not lately.
Right, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's not a joke then that this is
No,
a
this
unique
really
type of neighborhood,
is
and
a
that he always
very-
portrayed a unique type of neighborhood.
Yes, yes. Where the land of make believe came from, I bet.
Literally,
Yes.
Murray Avenue might be the
There you
drag
go.
that he had
there
in mind.
You go. Another example of how warm the community is in general. There were two boys with disabilities who were buried. I call them boys. Of course, they were
in their
men.
50s, yeah.
Yes, but they call them boys the same way I call my area boy, because they were more like 6, 8-year-olds. One of them was nonverbal, but he would hang out in his free time at the fire station. He was just a regular hanger-outer at the fire station, and I know my son also hangs out there sometimes. And the firemen are so kind, and it's interesting that our fire station has been named the Station 18. 18 is on our fire trucks.
That's funny.
So at the beginning of the Rosenthal boys' funeral, in full dress garb, the full fire station came marching down the aisle in a very formal way.
All uniformed
marched
firefighters.
up to the caskets and saluted, and then walked back up the other aisle. And just they said they knew David would love that. And all the publicity, everyone knew Cecil would love that. He was just a greeter and like the mayor of this city. He knew everyone and really sweet kids. I also wanted to tell you about our Banot Sheirut. We have two girls each year who come from Israel
Right.
to teach our kids in our day schools about Israel. And Saturday night, boy, they really understand about tragedies. They wanted to do something. So Motzei Shabbos, they put out the word to their family saying, could you maybe just take a picture saying, we are with you, Pittsburgh? Could you just take a picture and send it to us? And they thought they'd hear from 10 people, like in their wildest dreams, maybe 100. Within a few hours, they got 4,000 photos, 4,000 photos from friends and family in Israel. So we really are one people.
Wow.
About the uniqueness of the Pittsburgh community, the rabbi of Polat Tzedek has sat at meetings with the conservative rabbi of one of these shuls, Rabbi Perlman, who is a Shomer Shabbat. So Rabbi Yalkut Shabbos afternoon went to Rabbi Perlman's home just to stay with him and hang with him. Rabbi Perlman wouldn't answer the phone all day and got what for from the FBI who didn't know where the rabbis of the shuls were because they weren't picking up their phones. All of us had our phones bombarded as soon as Shabbos was over. But something I think your listeners might be interested in is one thing we're good at in the Jewish community is cooking, making meals for friends. So of course we know how to handle a shiva lineup of meals, and the shivas here are being handled through our United Jewish Federation, through all the donations people are making. They're paying for those catered meals. But this rabbi thought that maybe that conservative rabbi is having a really bad week. So people in the Orthodox community are making dinners for that conservative rabbi this week. It's that kind of community.
Boy, oh boy. You're teaching us a lot of lessons this morning, I must say.
Yeah, I have one thing in closing.
Sure.
And it's actually a visual that Rabbi Wasserman gave me that I think I'm going to carry with me into Shabbos. For those of us who have two prominent candles in addition to the other candles we light Friday night, when you picture those two candles together, they look like an 11.
Ugh.
So maybe people keep in mind that we lost 11 precious souls last Shabbos. It's not even a week ago, and it feels like a lifetime ago. So I know that sounds really
We haven't
corny.
even had another Shabbos yet.
Yeah. So we really appreciate your coming to town.
Thank you very much.
And thank you again for being here, and thank everybody in the listening audience for their love and concern for our teeny little Squirrel Hill.
It's much appreciated what you're saying, and thanks for all your help in helping us this week. Nina Butler, everybody. Her claim to fame, Uri Butler's mother. So those of you who are familiar with Camp Hask, you know exactly who I mean and why she's such a prominent woman, because she is, in fact, Uri Butler's mother. Ed Popolowski is here. He is a Pittsburgh native and no doubt a Steeler fan.
Oh, yeah.
He's a construction foreman who does work here in our shul in the historic Sha'arei Torah. And he has a perspective from the general community here in Pittsburgh in the aftermath of the Shabbos attack that took 11 of our brothers and sisters. Ed, thank you for being here.
No problem.
Tell me about the reaction of the community in general to what happened on Shabbos here in Pittsburgh.
Shocking. Very shocking.
Never expected it here, huh?
No, it's disturbing. It is.
Are people, I don't know, afraid to gather, afraid to go to work, afraid to leave their homes? How would you describe it?
I think they did their mourning and they're just moving on. To me, you can't dwell on it. You got to move on. It is shocking and disturbing, but you have to let it go too.
Tell me about the relationship between the Jewish and non-Jewish community in this town.
There's no problem whatsoever.
Everyone seems to get along, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because we've been talking about brotherhood and sisterhood in our context, because we speak mostly to a Jewish audience, but you would say there's a real brotherhood here among everybody.
Oh, yeah. This brought a lot of people together. Unfortunately, it had to be that way, but it brought a lot of people out and during the visuals and all that.
Was it surprising to you that members of the Pittsburgh Steelers came out the way they did
to
be part of this? Are they viewed as real members of the community?
Yeah.
Because in New York, I don't know if we would have that type of reaction from our sports teams, frankly. But it seems your teams feel like they're
part of the community just like everybody else.
It's pretty remarkable. And the Pittsburgh Penguins also have to be
Yes.
recognized. I don't know if you're a hockey fan.
Oh, big time.
Oh, are you? Okay,
Right.
good. So I'm comfortable speaking to you about it. Not all the football people are big hockey people. But they also have to be commended because they saluted our
yeah.
community and they saluted the topic of hate. Not saluted, but they made sure to address the topic of hate and what they wore, and they were there both at home and on the road for our community, which is pretty amazing.
Yes.
So it's like small town USA, but with a big name.
Exactly.
It's pretty
And
remarkable.
Pittsburgh's a very small town, but big in nature.
Yeah, big in nature, and I'll tell you, it really has a big reputation nationwide. I can tell you
yes.
that much.
Yes.
Everyone talks about Pittsburgh and how incredible it is. Ed, thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, no problem.
A real pleasure, and
Nice
I really
meeting you.
appreciate it. A pleasure meeting you. More coming up. You're listening to JM and the AM on a Thursday morning broadcast with a reminder that we will be back here at the shul at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for the very first hour of our live lunch with our perspective and retrospective on some of the things and conversations that we had here. We met a lot of very interesting people and were taught a lot of lessons this morning. In addition to which, we have a full schedule, the Thursday schedule that you're used to here at the Nachum Segal Network with Charlie Harari, and then Spin Class with Michael Fragan, and then Allison Josephs, whose guest this morning will be Jonathan Greenstein of the Judaica House. And then That's Life with Miriam L. Wallach. Women and Prayer with Rebbitzin Dr. Adina Schmidman. That'll be the topic, Women and Prayer, as we encourage everybody all around the country to be in shul this coming Shabbos. 11 o'clock from here, 11 a.m. Eastern Time from here. Our live lunch, literally live, 11 until 12, and then Avrami will be live from noon until 1 o'clock as we head back to New York City. More coming up. We're at the Sha'arei Torah congregation, hosted by Rabbi Wasserman on a very special Jewish Unity Initiative JM in the AM Thursday. Keep it right here at the Nachum Segal Network.
Shem Hashem Yehalelu Shiru Loi Shi Chodosh Zamu Loi Ki Nizgov Shemo Yehalelu Es Shem Hashem Yehalelu Shiru Loi Shi Chodosh Zamu Loi Ki Nizgov Shemo Levatoi Levatoi Shem Hashem, es Shem Hashem, Yehalelu Shiru Loi, Shi Chodosh Zamu Loi, Ki Nizgov Shemo Yehalelu Es Shem Hashem, Yehalelu Shiru Loi, Shi Chodosh Zamu Loi, Ki Nizgov Shemo Levatoi, Levatoi Ki Nizgov Shemoi Levatoi, Levatoi Levatoi Yehalelu Es Shem Hashem Levatoi, Levatoi Ki Nizgov Shemoi Levatoi, Levatoi Levatoi Zamu Loi Ki Nizgov Shemoi Es Shem Hashem Yehalelu Shiru Loi Shi Chodosh Zamu Loi Ki Nizgov Shemo Levatoi Levatoi Ki Nizgov Shemo Levatoi 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 Yehalelu Es Shem Hashem Levatoi
JM in the AM, Thursday morning. Tomorrow, what I would call, I don't know, a regular Friday? Not really. It's not going to be a regular Friday. It's going to be an Erev Shabbos, the first Shabbos after the massacre here in Squirrel Hill. It's also going to be a Friday where the chief of police, not the police commissioner, but the chief of police, the highest uniformed officer in the New York City Police Department, is going to join us in the 7 o'clock hour tomorrow to discuss safety, security, and reassure everybody that based on what he knows in the NYPD and based on what he knows from police departments around the country, thank God we should enjoy, please God, we should enjoy a safe, secure Shabbos coming up everywhere, no matter where we are. So we'll talk about that. Also, we have the weekly update. Malcolm Hoenlein, who was here earlier in the week. We're here today, Thursday. He was here, I think, Sunday. Earlier in the week in Pittsburgh. He'll join us, and of course we'll talk about this story, which I'm sure will dominate the weekly update, and many other stories as well, including all the elections in Israel. Miriam L. Wallach is here and has an update on what's happening on the NSN app.
I just want to read a couple of app comments before the show closes. We had Schwiger, who I think is Sina, right?
Yeah.
Schwiger1 writes, Boker Tov and Kol HaKavod for always stepping up to the plate without hesitation to show solidarity with those who need it most. Going to be an amazing morning. And I would say, Sina, yes, thank God it really has been an amazing morning. Mayor Fertig wrote, we can't all visit Pittsburgh now, each for our own reasons, and more importantly for the reasons you just discussed, the wishes of the families and the limitations on the community's infrastructure. And that's why I appreciate that you made the trip. I feel like you are representing all of us who can't be there. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Miami Harry writes, Nachum, thank you for posting your Pittsburgh visit on Facebook. I'm currently in Shloshim for my mother, so I haven't been tuned in, but your show and presentation is phenomenal. You true unity by a true unifier. May you continue to go from strength to strength. May we only know smachot in the future. M.H. Dauber wrote, great idea and an amazing broadcast from Pittsburgh. As you say, anachnu imachem. And of course, Adam Joe writes, amazing.
Can always count on Adam Joe.
We appreciate everything. Oh, and Devorah Saban, I'm sorry, I skipped this one. Devorah
From
Saban
Israel.
had written, I was touched to see the U.S. flag and the Israeli flag projected onto the old city walls with the words, Pittsburgh, we stand with you.
That was amazing.
Yes.
We referenced it earlier. That was amazing.
The Rabbi IJF from Atlanta, who's been posting a lot.
Yeah.
He writes, Atlanta Jewish Academy, and indeed all of Atlanta stands with our family in Pittsburgh. Absolutely.
And as we always say, if it's an out-of-town community, they must know each other. So I'm sure Pittsburgh, I'm just kidding, of course. But
right.
I
thought we were not
I
kidding.
know, but from the
Okay.
New York perspective, we had to toss that in. But to Atlanta's credit, they are associated with a lot of other out-of-town
Right.
communities, as they are the Jewish capital of the South. Achenu b'Yisrael and Achim Achem, our brothers and sisters in Israel, we are with you. It's your favorite America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio around the world on the web at NachumSegal.com, on the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, on the beloved NSN app. I want to thank all of our guests. A lot of very special guests today. I want to thank Doug Shulkin. Those of you who are old WFMU listeners, Doug used to follow me every single Friday for years and years, and now he lives right next to Paulay Tzedek here in Squirrel Hill, and boy, did he give us a perspective, as did so many other people. Big thank you to Rabbi Wasserman, of course, not just for joining us, but for hosting us. At 11 a.m., we'll be live from here. At 11 a.m., we are live with a complete wrap-up of this trip. 11 a.m. until noon, we are live with a complete wrap-up of this trip from the shul, from Shari Torah. Until then, of course, Charlie Harari, and then Michael Fragan, and then Allison Josephs, and then Miriam L. Wallach. Then we continue live at 11 a.m., and then Avrami will wrap up the live lunch for this Erev Shabbos starting at 12 noon Eastern Time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, everybody, for all the wonderful comments. Make sure to be tuned in tomorrow morning for the weekly update and so much more. Till then, Nachum Segal reminding you, remember the past, live the present, and trust the future.